Why are you advocating for the grind of college, but not advocating for making money?
Because college is a reliable path that if you get on the path and you put in the work, there's a guaranteed reward at the end. It's not a competition with other people. Competitions by
a reliable path. What did you go to college?
Kind of.
Kind of. So you didn't even you dropped out, and you're telling people to go to college?
Yeah, because I'm a 1 in a million. What I did was incredibly rare. Like, what do you mean?
Okay, so this is an interesting topic for me because I taught college for a year. I actually got a master's degree. I got my BA. So I got my BA in Spanish and marketing. I thought I was going to go and do something in the business field, and that learning a second language would be an asset. I got a scholarship to go do an MA at Columbia in Spanish, and I said, "Oh, this will be great. I'll perfect, my Spanish. Fantastic." Hated it, loathed it. Came out. I taught college for a year, and then I went and I taught at a private school in Manhattan, grades 7 through 12. I was a dean there, basically an advisor doing a whole bunch of stuff. I also taught in a Catholic school. So I've had a pretty extensive experience teaching. I'm somebody who tells people, this is my advice. You mentioned STEM here. STEM is very different than a liberal arts degree. So you're talking about specialized use. I'm guessing that you mentioned STEM because that is more specified.
I mentioned STEM because I don't want to go through the argument of because technically people that get philosophy degrees and English and history degrees, English and history is important to society, and the degradation of these degrees, like, oh, we don't care about arts or any of that. That's all silly. We only care about is silly. But I didn't want to have that argument with him at that particular point in time.
Okay, can we have it? Can we have that discussion now? Are you
if you'd like to, sure.
I would love to because I had that degree, and what happened to me was I graduated from, and let me tell you my story. I don't know if it'll help you or not, but I graduated from college. I had a 4.0. I worked my butt off. I loved it. I loved studying. I was a professional student. I went to Columbia. I graduated with all honors. I come out and I go to get a job. And do you know what I knew how to do? Nothing. I had no practical skills. None. Knew how to do nothing. Seriously, I went to go get a job at an insurance company and I was like, what am I going to do? I don't have any practical skills. I could think. I could talk. I could do all of that stuff, but I didn't have any practical skills for the workforce. So I wandered around and meandered.
Is college supposed to teach you that, or is it just supposed to teach you the technicals instead? That's one thing I would like to know.
Around and all that stuff. So here's how I feel about college. If you're going for something specified, say you want to be an engineer, something very, very specific where you're going to go, you're going to study, you're going to acquire a certain skill set, you're going to come out, you're going to be marketable in an industry, you're going to have skills available to work on day one. I know how to do X, Y, and Z. Practical skills. Great. If you're going to go and you're just going to float around and you're going to take gender studies and you're going to, take some literature classes and you're going to largely socialize because that's what college has become. And by the way, get indoctrinated, which is happening in colleges all across America. So you come out thinking one way and not free thinking for yourself. All of that happens, you come out and you have no practical skills. How is that helpful? Is it not more helpful for someone to sign on for an online program and learn how to actually do something? Or I'm not saying do nothing, but I'm saying there are alternatives now to a 4-year degree that are specialized, that are practical, so that somebody comes out and knows how to do something. As opposed to just, I'm smart, I went to college, what do you know how to do? I don't know.
If you go to college and you don't do a single internship, you don't get a single job, you don't do anything, I mean, you've wasted the experience. I mean, I can point to, if you want to say that that's going to be the archetype of the college student you want to hold up, then fine. Then I'll say, if you don't go to college and you just meander around, you work at 7-Eleven, then you get a job at McDonald's, then you become a McDonald's supervisor, and then you go work at Burger King, well, you've also wasted 4 years of your life, right? I'm not going to compare the high-driven guy that doesn't go to college and does all the certifications on his own, all the workshops on his own, gets a huge job, and by 22 and then compare that to like a college student that does nothing. That's not an equal comparison.
But forget about doing it. I didn't. I had a 4.0. I worked my butt off.
I don't know what your college. Can you speak Spanish?
But there's plenty of people. Sure, of course I can.
Nice, and you're Miami, so that's good. There you go. That's a good skill you picked up.
But what was that going to do if I wanted to be a Spanish teacher? Great.
I can't go on your personal experience because
so
I don't know. But
general.
This is something that I would beg conservatives to do. You have to stop attacking liberal arts because I'm tired on my stream of debating how many new black, trans, women characters are in the next TV show, okay? Conservatives have suicided themselves on the culture war because they refuse to engage in the things that matter culturally. And when you say things things like liberal arts are important, things like entertainment, things like music, all these things are really important things. And when conservatives just say, do STEM, don't do that, that's for losers. English is for losers. history's for losers. And then you turn around, you're like, oh my God, CRT, that's horrible. Well, how do you expect, what else would CRT be besides something written by the most progressive and crazy people? Because all the conservatives are driven to only do engineering and technology, right? I want there to be a conservative that is studying gender studies. I want that to happen, so that when people are saying things like, I think any gender can be anything, and our pronoun should be Zer, I want a conservative there saying, you know what, I think it's good to push on some gender things, but that's a little bit fucking insane, you know? I think that'd be good. But when conservatives push for education to look a certain way, I think that some of it starts to become self-fulfilling, to where conservatives will say, I think the institutions are becoming a little bit ideologically driven. Stay away from the liberal arts. Or I think that college in general is becoming more ideologically driven. We need to kind of like do private schools and stay out of there. Well, what's happening to the schools? They're becoming more and more and more and more and more ideologically driven as conservatives refuse to engage with them. And then those people are growing up, they're joining the administration and the staff, and now they're becoming even more left-leaning. And then conservatives are going, oh my God, look at all these liberal institutions. Look at how far left they are. And I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh telling me constantly that this is what colleges were going to become, and kind of like mail-in ballots for Trump. It almost became a form of self-fulfilling prophecy, in my opinion.
But colleges have been like that. I mean, I went to college 20 years ago, and it was already like that. It was already.
No, it wasn't. Like, stop. No, it wasn't. The way colleges are set up today, you are taking so many things and making people learn stuff that has nothing to do with the education just because you're trying to run up the profits, you're trying to run up the tuition fees and everything. We got it to the point where colleges got a whole industry of books, and they force you to buy new books or buy the digital version. You have to rent out books. You can't even sell them back. There's always a new edition, so you got to get that one. And it's just a way to just bleed young people of so much money. It's like college has become a thing where in order to prove yourself to America, you have to go into a massive amount of debt. It's hardly even becoming an investment into yourself. You're just going into debt.
It was already all liberal all the time. I mean, conservatives, it sounds great. It sounds like a utopia. Conservatives go into a gender, whatever, gender studies class, and they talk about pronouns, and everyone has a great civil discussion, and everyone disagrees. That's not what happens to conservatives on college campuses. They
Not
get
now,
shut
it doesn't,
down.
of course.
They get put in the corner. You see, conservative can't even go to speak. I mean, a Tommy Lauren, whether you agree with her or not, can't even go to speak on a college campus without getting shut down, harassed, and they have to call in security. That's a huge problem. Why would a conservative parent want to send their child to an institution of supposedly higher learning where they're going to learn how to be a free-thinking person for them to either get indoctrinated or punished? Ridiculous.
I'm going to really need people to explain what indoctrination means. Because do they not get indoctrinated at private Christian colleges? Is that not indoctrination, or is that different?
I would never. I hope that my child, I have a son, I have a 3-year-old, amazing kid, smart kid, great. What I want for him more than anything is for him, once he figures out what he wants to do in life, I would love for him to get some practical skills in that area. I don't need him to go to college for 4 years to learn how not to think, to be indoctrinated, for me to spend a fortune, for him to come to party and drink and do whatever he's going to do, and to come out and not know how to do anything. If he comes to me and he says, hey, listen, Mom, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and there's a program for this, and I can do it in 2 years, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to be able to do this, and it's going to be really awesome, and that's what I want to do. Amazing. Let's do it. So conservatives aren't here saying, oh, humanities is a joke and we don't care about English.
They do say that, but
I mean, that's just what they're saying is that if you're going to invest money in something, there should be a return on that investment. And that means that you should have a productive, free-thinking child at the end of that comes out and is in a better position than they were before they went in. That's not what's happening in college. If I were hiring someone for a position today, I would much rather hire someone who did not go to college. Why?
No shot.
100%.
Absolutely
and I do it all
not.
the time. And the reason is that the people who go to college go through 4 years, and every single one of them talks and thinks and acts like a robot 9 out of 10
That's
times.
just if I'm hiring somebody and I've got 2 equivalent candidates in front of me, and I've got a guy that was able to get his 4-year degree, that speaks volumes. I know that you can be on time. I know that you can show up every day and do what's assigned to you. I know that you have the ability to finish something. That's a hugely important thing versus somebody that shows up with no degree. If you don't have a degree and you can make it without a degree, but you need a damn good portfolio to do that. And that is true advice for anybody working in any field. If
That
you think you can
four-year
show up,
degree is on
if
its
you,
way out.
it's
It's on its way out.
absolutely. If
It's on
it's
its way
on
out.
its way out, it's only because people are wanting more and more and more education. The college degree is the #1 grower of wealth inequality in the United States because people with college degrees are out earning everybody else so much.
Watch what
And
happens
it's
in the next 10 years with college degrees.
It's becoming
Watch.
more of a it's only trended in one direction where the degree is becoming more and more important. It's so important. Even other conservative-esque people like Jordan Peterson talk about, like, how do we have a society where it functions when the IQ requirements for performing well in society are becoming higher and higher and higher and higher, where the types of work that we have, the specialization required, the training required is getting higher and higher and higher, to where having that 4-year degree is, from my day, it's the equivalent to it used to be having a GED or high school degree, where, like, if you didn't have high school in the 80s or 90s, like, well, man, what are you? You're a loser. Well, now, 2002, it just, the numbers don't lie. I mean, like, you can look at the median earnings for a high school degree.
What I'm telling you is that
it is changing, and that it's becoming more and more of a requirement.
You're talking to me about IQ as if college is an indicator of your IQ.
You don't think IQ correlates to intelligence?
Do you know how many people I talk to every day who are entrepreneurs?
Y'all really be mischaracterizing this IQ stuff. IQ is not an indication of success. It just determines how likely you are to maybe succeed. That's it. It doesn't determine whether you're actually going to be successful or not in anything.
Who didn't go to college or spent
how
their
many
college
people-
years doing nothing
how
or
many-
wasted their college years or have that 4-year degree but partied and joked around all the time, and you'll talk to them and they'll say, I had a friend who didn't go to college at all but was motivated and was focused. I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, as an alternative to a 4-year degree for everyone, and some people may thrive in college. Like I said, you go to school for engineering, you go to school for a specialized subject, you go to school for someone where there's going to be an obvious reward to that program. Fine. I'm not telling people, everyone, this is a blanket recipe for you. However, there are going to people out there who are going to want to do something specialized that does not fit in with a 4-year bracket. That doesn't mean that they're not going to work hard. That doesn't mean that they're not going to develop a skill set. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be marketable to an entrepreneur just because they don't have a 4-year degree. That way of thinking is going to be antiquated very soon.
I'll if you want to do it.
Should make a lot of good points. Sometimes the broader narrative is wrong, but on this specific thing, she's right, man. It's like multiple ways to go about this.
Time frame and a $20 bet. I'll bet you money. It's the easiest money I've ever made. Okay, $20.
I can do that for $20.
5 years, whatever you want. We'll do another episode if we're still live. And
But Steven, look at what happened. Honestly, look at the one of the reasons that we just went through, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, last couple of years, and you saw what happened on college campuses. Look at what happened. I mean, they locked kids down in their dorm rooms in many schools. They now are, instituting, I don't know how you feel about mandates. I strongly oppose the mandates, but they're instituting that on college campuses. You have parents all over the place that are watching this stuff and saying, what am I paying for?
I am 33 years old. I went through
Right, but as parents, that's on us to make sure that our kids are going down the right path. Like, when I was coming up, everybody told us, or our generation told, the generation raising us told us that we needed to go to college. We need to go to college. We got to get that degree. All right, well, the degree in what? And if we want to do something, especially as guys, do we have to get a degree? Because one of the things that was really missing was the fact that we just ignored trade schools. Like, we just, the electrician, the plumbers, all of those different things, they were kind of coming up. People were trying to tell us, like, yo, those aren't jobs. You want the office job. You want the corporate job. You want to climb up the corporate ladder and things like that. And it's like, now we got a generation like Gen X, baby boomers, mad that we listened to them and got a degree, but we got a degree in things that we thought were important or things that thought were going to make us, more marketable in the labor force. And, you just kind of giving us these vague solutions with no real problem, no real path, no real outline.
a phase when I was 15 where my parents did a certain thing and I didn't like that thing and I wanted to do the exact opposite of everything. At some point we have to grow out of that. I can look at college campuses, and I've argued a lot of stuff. I think that I just went to the University of Texas in Austin and A&M, and I just did a Change My Mind event where I argue that wokeism is going way too far across most college campuses. I'm not going to disagree with it. That's absolutely true in a number of ways. People were writing, school administrators were writing if people needed therapy after the Rittenhouse verdict. Okay,
or the Trump win.
Yeah, it was unbelievably cringe. But I can't let that one thing that I don't like poison my mind against seeing all of the other upsides of doing college. If you have people that are capable of doing things outside of college, this is the advice that I give somebody. If somebody asks me, if they go, do you think I should go to college? And I go, if you have to ask me, the answer is probably yes. Because the type of people that are driven enough, like when you talk about people that didn't go to college that are entrepreneurs, they're not going to college because they did really bad in math and English and school is just not for them. They're not going to college because they're so busy with the path they're on in life, with what they've got already, they don't have time for it, right? There are people that are 19, 20. Yeah, they're already working with their parents' business. They're already have learned a trade, through their teen years because friends or a dad of a friend taught them things. They're already contributing to projects online. They're coding, they're programming 19, 20, 21.
Right.
And by the time these people at 22, 23, these are the stars. These are the people that they would come to me, hey, can I work on your website? Can I do it? And I go, oh, well, what have you done? And they go, this is what I've done. I go, okay, yeah, obviously you can work on my stuff. But a lot of people that don't go to college aren't like that. And it's a bit, it's, I don't want to say delusional because that's too harsh, but this idea that like all these people don't go to college because they're so busy pursuing other things is just not true.
I'm not saying all of them,
Okay,
but that's
sure.
where the role of parenting comes in, where you have to know your kid. You have to have.
I mean, I have a
child.
my child is 11 years old, and I told him, if you want to get into YouTube, do stuff like I do, that's great. You're finishing school though. You absolutely are. It's just you're doing college. It's once you have that degree, nobody can take it from you. You've shown something to the world. I might go, but that you can finish a college degree.
You show a piece of paper to the world that says
I'm so
what?
jealous of. Give me your master's.
You can have it.
Yeah.
You know what? You can have it because and I'll tell you why you can have
Uh-huh.
it, because I learned more practical skills waitressing in New York City than I ever got from getting a master's degree at Columbia University. And if I could go back in time, I always say I wouldn't.
Right, but those are things that colleges aren't supposed to teach you. They're supposed to teach you the technical aspects, the in-depth levels. College is not supposed to teach you how to move on an everyday basis. It's not supposed to teach you how to I guess street smarts. I know there's some psychologists who say there's really no difference between street smarts and book smarts. But in general society, there kind of is. You're supposed to go learn the technical stuff in college, but it's really your parents and your environment that's supposed to teach you that every day how to interact with people. The normal job is supposed to give you that real experience about what you're supposed to do with the knowledge you gain. College is it's strict education. A lot of y'all are looking for, I don't know, personalities or characters or a way to go about your life. And that's not really what college is for.
Change anything, because you know how you see those
Yeah,
movies where you
you
go
are
back in
who you are,
time, and
man.
I want my family to be what it is today, and I love my child, and I wouldn't want to move any of those puzzle pieces. But if I could go back and not move any of the puzzle pieces and not have wasted a year at Columbia University, I got it for free, and I can't even justify it.
It's a unique experience, though.
Great, it was a unique experience. I was miserable.
Then you should have done something better with it. But you know what?
It was not practical.
Where are there more miserable people at? Miserable people getting their masters at Columbia's, or miserable people that are doing waitressing in New York City?
You know what? I don't know, actually, because
Well, okay.
everybody I worked with was happy.
Then here's a question. If we talk about all of the elites in society, okay,
Yeah.
the elites that run everything, I know you guys like that one. What do they do
Is
with
it
other
not true?
kids? What do they do with other kids?
Of
They're
course
getting
they
them into
put
the
them-
best university,
Of
the best
course.
Ivy League schools. You're going to Stanford. You're going
But
to.
why is that?
But these guys are so successful. Shouldn't
But
they be
why
telling
is
kids,
that?
no, not my son's not going to
No.
waste his time at Harvard or
Why
Yale.
is
My
that?
son's going to go out and he's going to start working at 19, because education is important.
No,
It's the
that's not
foundation
why.
that you build the rest of your life
That's
on.
not
And you're at
why.
the one stage in life where you can continue to learn and acquire knowledge and a unique skill set
Steven.
that you can't outside.
You know that's not why.
It is absolute. What
They're
is the
all
reason?
of the same political mind. They are more than happy. You're talking about liberal elites in New York City. Of course, they're
Any
more than
elites.
happy to take their kids and put them in the best universities, because they know that the indoctrination that they have started in their household is just going to continue
Oh,
beautifully
you
over
think
there.
there's somebody's gonna
And
send their kid to
because they
Harvard just to
value-
finish indoctrinate?
But
You
do
can indoctrinate in their own
understand?
household.
These pieces of paper look great on a wall. What does it mean?
It shows
There are
that you
people
went
who
to
come
for
out of-
4 or 5 years.
So
You took some
what?
classes. You passed some tests. You could
Great.
do a thing.
Great.
You care.
Yeah, but to be fair, there's some colleges where you get the degree and the only thing you've been able to prove is that you can double down on bad decision making, because the degree itself is fucking useless in the real world.
about reading scores or test when you talk about like black communities or disadvantaged communities?
Yeah.
Do you say that like it's a crime that they can't read, that they can't do math? Why does education matter only up to a certain point, but not past that?
Because of what's happened to college in the last
Because
2
of
decades.
woke people?
Not just
The woke
people.
boogeyman scared the kids
Not
off of
just
college
woke
campus?
people, but if college is not a place where you're learning how to think anymore, and if college is not a place where diversity of thought actually exists, and if college is not a place that embraces true diversity, not just in what color are you and what your culture is, but in how you actually view and see the world, then what's the point? Why do I need to send my kid to go in and come out a robot? It's ridiculous.
Because
so I'm not saying there's no value.
Because the median earning of somebody with a 4-year degree is $20,000 a year higher than
And what
somebody
I'm
with only
telling
high
you
school.
is I see your stats, I hear them, but what I'm trying to say is that way of looking at the world and that way of idolizing this piece of paper is going to be on its way out very soon, because what you're seeing is a rejection of $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 a year investment, and then you have a kid that comes out and you're like, what did I just do? The kid often comes out dumber, less able to think for themselves, and less accomplished, and they sit on the couch that year and they say, what are you going to do now? I'm not sure.
All of that, and they're still out earning their high school peers. It's crazy how that works. And they had 4.
Yeah, they're still young adults, young teenagers. I mean, typically nobody really knows what they're going to do at that age. I mean, it's just some of these arguments that conservatives makes. It's like, yo, do y'all know how life works, or do you remember what it's like being that age? Nobody had that shit figured out. Hell, I'm 35, and most people around my age, including myself, still don't have it truly figured out. Like, that's, I don't know.
4 extra years together.
Watch
I
what
guess all that
happens.
experience at Burger King didn't
We're
pay
not
off.
talking about today, but watch what
Okay.
happens. And I'm not talking about getting a minimum wage job as an alternative. What I'm saying is people need to broaden their minds. College still exists, and it will be the appropriate decision for some. Alternative programs do exist and will be the appropriate decision for some, in order to, yes, you want to get educated. You want to get a path towards success. You want to get a path toward learning actual skills. That's not going to be college for everybody. That's all I'm saying. It's a little bit more gray for me than that. I don't want that to be everybody's prescription, because I don't think it fits everybody's life.
Okay, well, this is a far different statement to I don't want every single person going to.
I agree that not everybody's meant to go to college, and that's not going to be the path. But if that's going to be the case, then we as Americans need to start really advocating the different ways to go about being successful in life. Because right now, the reality is that people are looking at what Destiny is saying and is going, yo, if I want to actually make some real money, I have to go to college and get a degree. Because right now, any other way is just guaranteeing that I'm not going to be able to pay anything off or live any sort of comfortable lifestyle. Now, obviously, no one is entitled to a specific lifestyle, but damn, it don't have to be hard as hell in every single direction.
College versus college
don't
is a
want
waste
every
of
single-
money.
I don't
well,
want
is
every
college a
single
waste of
person.
money? You just not want it, because I agree there are some people that would do way better in trade schools. I hated school. I sucked at school.
There you go.
And so yeah, maybe I would have done better in like a different type of program coming out for sure. And I grew up as a millennial, and millennials were all told go to college, go to college, go to. It was like the only thing you
Right.
like, right after breathing and eating, go to college. So yeah, I agree that there are different paths for different people.
So that's what I'm saying. What I'm
no,
saying
what you
is
were saying
one
earlier
size-
was that college was a waste of
No,
money.
college
That's what you
is
said earlier.
college is largely a scam for many
Okay,
people.
well that's a different statement. Then
It
not
is
everybody should go to
largely a scam,
college.
But no, it is largely a scam for many people. But I also believe that because I don't believe in one size fits all for anything, whether you're talking about the medical system, whether you're talking about anything, I don't like one size fits all mandates. I don't like any of that. I say know your kid. Have a conversation with your kid, understand your kid. They're going to have gone through high school. You're going to know what that experience was like. You're going to know what they like. How driven are they? What are they
Sure.
interested in? Have those conversations, and don't get told by people that college is their only answer and their only path towards success. I don't believe that to be true. And I do believe 100% that college, not a scam for everybody, but in large part for many students that come out, they come out dumber, less able to think for themselves, and it's a disgrace for how
I think she kind of mischaracterizes college. It's definitely not a scam per se, but it's definitely been designed to take advantage of students more and more. But calling it a scam implies that you just want to destroy the whole freaking thing. Like the whole system's not worth it. Now we just need to really kind of dial it back and get back to the point of what college was supposed to be meant for.
how much money their parents have invested for 4 years.
Okay.
100%.
And I've
I
seen
stand by
plenty of
that.
people that skip college that they'll do the one leap year. Well, I'm just going to take 1 year off. They never got back into it, and their lives just kind of petter out to nothing. Very few of these people become successful entrepreneurs. Very few of these people go on to acquire valuable trades and skills.
Okay.
Usually, they end up doing some kind of work, and they kind of promote, and they're just kind of like whatever for the rest of
Okay, I want to talk about one of your nuanced. You have a nuanced opinion on
Everything.
minors, puberty blockers,
Oh,
some of this.
geez.
I don't know if on puberty blockers, but you talked a little bit about sports as well, transports, etc. Let's go to No Jumper. Tyler, 3343, and let's play that. I'm loving this discussion, audience. I'm hoping you are too. By the way, Tyler, do we have super chats we need to get to?
Not yet, but
Is the conversation popping?
people really like it. Actually, there was one earlier. Somebody said everybody knows that money is valuable when you have medical issues. They were making the case if you're ill, if you have a family member
course.
that's ill, that money is exceptionally valuable.
We can talk about that. I'm a
What a great argument for some sort of like socialized health.
hell.
Oh my
what
goodness.
a great
so that
argument
money
to
wouldn't be a
wreck it.
gateway to oh my
Hell
gosh.
No, government, get out of my health, get out of my life. We're gonna get back to that. Okay, let's go do minor. I think this is an important gray area. So let's show this part.
There are strong arguments for minors getting access to, ideally with a doctor's approval, like HRT and stuff, or puberty
I
blockers
get used to
at least at a
playing
young
this
age.
game.
That's a pretty radical left position. It's pretty far to the left.
Right.
But I don't think trans women should be competing in sports with cis women, and all the research supports that.
Right.
And that position can make me sound like a f***ing Nazi, depending on who I'm talking to.
But also,
Okay,
like,
so that's interesting to me because, well, I don't support puberty blockers for minors. If you're an
I coulda
adult,
guessed that,
I
yeah.
have, well, I lived for a very long time as like live and let live. You know, do what you want to do. You're a grown adult as long as you're not hurting anyone else, as long as you're, even when it comes to relationships, you want to open a relationship, you don't. As long as it's consensual, no one's getting hurt, do you. But when it comes to children, I'm deeply concerned about what I'm seeing with young children. I mean, you have places like Boston Medical, you have other locations coming out and talking about having very descriptive conversations about gender in 3-year-olds. Utterly ridiculous. I have a 3-year-old. Sometimes he thinks he's a monkey. He'll say he's Curious George. He's 3. He's 3. So I think there's a lot of brainwashing and societal manipulation happening toward young children. And I also think puberty blockers for kids are incredibly dangerous. They don't just affect the sex organs, they affect multiple systems of the body. They affect the brain. And there is no scientific proof that once they are brought back in, let's say it's a pause and then you bring them back in, that a child's development continues as if it hadn't been interrupted. There's no studies that can show that. So I think it's an incredibly dangerous thing. What I'm interested about is that you hold an opinion that there should be some access to puberty blockers for kids. So I want you to talk a little bit about why. And also, though, you are what I deem rational on sports. Tell me a little bit about how it has been to exist in a world where you have those two opinions, and I'm sure you've made everybody mad at the same time.
So this is something I will die on this hill for, okay? If I have a medical issue involving my son, the only 3 people I ever want involved in that conversation are me and his mom, him, and the doctor. If somebody is trying to make some procedure that I think could make him better illegal or whatever, that is the worst possible world I could ever live in. To where if for whatever reason my son and I feel like I've gone through all the appropriate steps and he feels like he's a girl or he's a trans woman or whatever, not at 5, I'm not talking at 5, but at 14, 15.
At 14?
Yeah, if he's having those feelings and we go through therapists or whatever, and that is an option, it's like, well, this is what he's saying, this is what his doctor's saying, and you know what, I'm the parent, I'm going to ultimately make the decision to pull the trigger on that. I don't think anybody else, especially not the government, has the right to stand in between me and my child's future in that decision because of
Facts. 100% facts. This is between the adult, the minor, and the doctor.
some government policy that a bureaucrat is writing.
But you support socialized medicine, right?
Socialized medicine doesn't mandate you have to get a certain procedure.
So, but if you supported socialized medicine, wouldn't the government essentially have some role in every decision-making process that happen? I mean, it's government
it's about making
intervention
the
and personal.
availability of some
Oh,
particular.
that's not how socialized medicine works. You know, in all countries that have socialized medicine, there's restrictions on certain procedures and not others, and you have people that have to flee those countries to come
That's
here.
the same thing that happens in the United States with insurance companies. Have you ever tried to do an in-network or out-of-network prescription?
Yeah, but-
obviously there's going to be some decisions at the end of the day in terms of like
I'm
what
just
is
curious,
what is
'cause you
affordable.
said
But
government
it's
to keep
fundamentally different between like what is an affordable drug or what's in-network, out-of-network, or what's like an appropriate prescription versus like you're not allowed to do this because ideologically Washington has voted a certain way, and now this type of treatment is available to your child. I think those are
That
fundamentally
happens
different
under
types of
socialized
things.
medicine all the time, where people are told that, oh, you're not entitled to this procedure because we believe that you're old and it's not worth it, and they make decisions about what people can and can't do. all
Old
the
and
time.
not these are fun. If you
Happens
have
all the
somebody that's
time.
87 years old and they're trying to get, you know, like a $20 million surgery that might extend their life by like a couple months, that's a fundamentally different question than like.
Oh,
do
then
I
the
have a right
government
to
can come in
pursue-
and say that person's not entitled to that.
If it's not going to be the government, it's going to be an insurance company. What do you,
No, I'm
like,
ta- I'm
so we don't
talking
have
about
we live on a
under
planet of
socialized
limited resources. We don't have infinite resources. There's going to be some. We do have infinite
No,
resources.
I'm talking about socialized medicine. We're having a different
This happens.
conversation.
Can you acknowledge this happens in private medicine too, right? There's only
Of
so many.
course.
Okay, so there's only so many resources. Even if it was a libertarian fantasy
Oh,
world,
listen.
where it's an anarcho-capitalist, we all pay for whatever we want. Even in that world, you can only buy so many things, right?
Well,
so of
not
course-
necessarily though.
Yes,
If-
necessarily.
not
Hold on, we
necessarily.
live with limited resources. You said that.
No. Yes, within the system. But if you are somebody who went out and made a shit ton of money and you have a shit ton of money in your backyard and you can go to doctors that are not part of the system, you can have access to procedures and treatments that you wouldn't have had. Like, for example, when I had Lyme disease, perfect example, and I went through the system and what they gave me made me sicker and sicker and sicker. And then I found a holistic doctor that didn't take insurance, where it was expensive. And luckily I had saved my money and had that money in bank and went and feel better now than I ever did before. That is why money is freedom.
Okay, so you think that the best healthcare should only be available to the elites in the world?
No, absolutely.
That was a really strange argument. Like you use a personal thing talking about holistic medicine, but the fact is that you were in a position to you were in a position to financially make that, I guess, make that choice. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I think some people argue from a position where they don't even realize like not everybody or most people are going to be in a position to make those sort of decisions. And we got to work on that.
How many
Not.
people are going to be able to afford to go to another country for
That's
healthcare?
why we had a whole conversation before
Wait, how many?
about
I
reaching
want
for
to
the
answer this.
stars.
How many people do you think realistically in a country can fly to another country for a medical treatment?
Not a lot.
Give me a percentage.
Oh, small amount. I don't know.
Like less than 2, probably.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Okay.
I
I
mean,
don't want a
I'm-
medical system. So you're telling me, well, in your system, there might be rationing because the 88-year-old grandma can't get a hip replacement. And I'm saying, well, in your system, you're telling me that less than 2% of people can afford like life-saving medicine or alternative
No.
treatments or therapies?
What I'm saying to you is I don't want to exist in a system where government is making decisions for people's individual health.
Okay, and I don't
mean,
want to
that's
exist in.
different
I don't
from-
want to exist in a system where your zip code determines.
She just says she doesn't want to exist in a system where government is making decisions for people's health, and literally just spent the exact making the exact opposite argument talking about transgender kids and puberty blockers and stuff like that. She wants the government to come in and ban that decision making.
Type of healthcare you can get for your child. That's a crime.
Okay,
to
so
me.
you want reform of the health insurance system in the United States, but that's not the answer to that. And I agree because I went in separate conversation, but I remember when I went in and had a baby, and the hospital bills were extraordinary. I mean, it was insane. I honestly had a regular natural delivery, no C-section, barely any drugs, nothing. And I looked at the bills and I said, what would the average person do in a predicament like this? Because I wasn't the average person that year. I had a television job, and even to pay that was like, it was a dent. You know, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So if we're going to have a conversation about reforming the healthcare system, great. We can have that conversation. 100% I'm on board that there are problems in our healthcare system that make basic things very inaccessible to a large number of people, or it traumatizes their entire life to have to pay for them. 100%. But is the answer to that more government involvement in the system? That is extremely dangerous as far as I'm concerned. And if you look at the past 2 years, just as what happened with government, with mandates, with the Biden administration stepping in and wanting to say, you lose your job if you don't get an experimental vaccine, that should have scared the shit out of everybody as far as when you get government involved and they are making decisions for your health, oftentimes they will make decisions that go against the advice of your own doctor, and your own doctor is done. Can't do anything about it. You either have to choose.
But you just made the whole argument that government should prevent adults with their own children from making decisions with their doctors. You want the government to ban that. It's not making any sense right now.
Between whether to put food on the table for your family or to get an experimental drug. I do not want government having that kind of authority and power over anyone's health, because I do have a distrust of government institutions.
I work tangential to the tech field. If somebody wants to build a new piece of software or build something for a website, the first question you ask when you go to the table is, has it been done already? Because if it has, then you copy paste it. You never rebuild the wheel. Why would you ever do that? When I look at all of the successful healthcare systems around the world, I look at how everybody does healthcare. Every single country that has a functioning healthcare system does it in this way. Why would I want the United States to do it in this way? It doesn't make
Well, not
any
every country is
sense.
the same. The population's not the same, and not every
They're
people say
all
this about
human
guns
beings.
too, though.
They all, a lot of them are fat in Europe. A lot of them have health issues. A lot
Let
of
me
them are
ask you
different.
this though: do you make the same argument for guns? Because when I talk about guns, people, you know, Pierce Morgan, whoever it may be, people will say, well, this doesn't exist in Europe, and we should modify. And I say, well, Europe, that's not America. That's not our Constitution. That's not what we were founded on. There are certain principles of freedom in this country. We have a Second Amendment in this country. So can we not acknowledge that it's different? It's different. United States is
Guns
different.
are different because the Second Amendment is literally built right into
Not to
our...
those people making those arguments. They don't care.
I'm not those people. But I wasn't aware of an 11th Amendment that said thou shalt have the right to have private insurance companies be the sole provider of healthcare coverage in the United States, and there shall not be a socialized medicine. Like how we deal healthcare is not in.
Destiny is 100% correct here. 100% correct.
Enshrined in our Constitution of enumerated powers. We have flexibility and options in terms of how we want to do things. But I'm just saying that, like, if every single country does something in this way, this is like in my opinion, this is the dumb form of, there are great forms of American exceptionalism. This is the dumb form of American exceptionalism, where it's like, we're going to do things our own way, in the way that is the most complicated, the most expensive. We spend more than any other country in the world on healthcare related stuff. We don't even have good outcomes to show for it. And then when I argue with other people about it, well, the great thing about the United States of America is that the top 1%, the same elites that I rally against all the time, are able to fly to other countries to buy whatever crazy healthcare stuff that they want. And I don't know. I don't think that system is right.
So, and we would agree that there's something deeply broken about the American medical system, but we would probably disagree as to why. So increasingly, you have a number of people in this. You have an expanding problem with obesity in this country. You have an expanding problem with what people eat. You have an expanding, and I would argue that big pharma has a financial investment in keeping and making people sick, and that is because they don't make money off of healthy people.
How do you make people sick as big pharma?
By making them. Because the solution, whenever you have a problem in this country, anytime you have a headache, from when you have a headache to you have a menstrual cramp to you have anything, the solution from Big Pharma is a drug. And a drug has a...
To be fair, I get the overall point she's trying to make here. The profit motive that exists in our healthcare industry absolutely tries to promote unhealthiness, because that guarantees that you need to go back to the hospital and seek treatment. And that's a real thing that we can agree and acknowledge on.
A side effect, and then that makes you sick. And what Big Pharma
what is pharma? What does pharma stand for? What are they going to give you? I'm not going to go to Big Pharma and get a new workout plan. That's not a problem. That's exactly what pharma exists for. It's a pharmacy.
But the reason it's a problem is because traditional medical establishment utilizes pharma as the primary means of solving everybody's problems. And you know what they don't do? They don't get to the root cause of the problem.
Because the root cause of the problem can't be addressed by pharmacies. But if you go into the hospital and you say, doctor, I've got high blood pressure, I have hypertension, what are you going to do for me? The doctor could say, well, check this out. First of all, your diet is insanely high in sodium.
They don't.
You don't exercise at all.
They
do, but a doctor can't just say that, because what is a patient going to do? In the free, wonderful market of the United States, if you go to a doctor and he tells you over and over again, you're fat as you never sleep, and you are just you're destroying your body with lack of physical activity, you're going to say, okay, well, you. I'm going to go to the doctor down the street and I'm going to get the pill that's going to help my blood pressure. As a doctor, the only thing you can do is prescribe a pill. Now, anytime you can say, hey, try doing diet and exercise. Talk to any doctor, they will tell you this. Every doctor that I've spoken to will say, I always tell my patients, hey, do diet, exercise, or whatever. But at the end of the day, as a doctor, you can't control that.
That's not what's happening.
That
it's
is
just
exactly.
not. No, and I can tell you, listen, my personal experience, and I know people in the chat, please raise your hand if you've had this experience. But I don't know if you've ever had anything chronic that I'm sure
my child's mom had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay,
so I've had lots of hospital. My grandma was
when I had the Lyme disease, it was a nightmare. It was doctor to doctor.
Hold on, did you have Lyme disease or did you have chronic Lyme disease?
I had Lyme disease that was a late-stage diagnosis. So essentially what happened was I got a late-stage diagnosis. I didn't know it was Lyme. I went through a bunch of tests. I did have a rash, so later was able to attribute it to that, and had symptoms that progressed until I really got to the root cause of what was going on.
What is the time frame here? Just
late-stage diagnosis, like
time
9
frame,
months.
like how? Okay, all right.
Why?
I don't believe in chronic Lyme disease, but that's
it's
okay.
It's not chronic Lyme disease. That's
okay.
not what I had. What I had
gotcha.
was a Lyme disease diagnosis that went undiagnosed for a long period of time, got sick. Then I took prescription drugs for it, which was fantastic until it made me sicker. And then I went to a holistic doctor. I went to neurologists.
What did you do with the holistic doctor that cured you?
A lot with diet, a lot with supplements, a lot with detoxifying the body.
Why is there nobody when you talk about people that are selling you supplements, selling you vitamin D, selling you detoxifying things? How are these guys not making money just like Big Pharma is?
They are making money.
Then why would you trust them any more than Big Pharma?
Because they get results.
If they had results, they would be big pharma.
No, they wouldn't.
don't have results. That's why it's called holistic medicine and not medicine.
You're looking at the results. I could barely walk across a room on The View, and now I could probably kick most people's asses in the gym, and I feel better than I ever did before. It happens all the time. If you don't believe that people get sick, abandon a big pharma system, say that's not for me, and go a holistic route and get better, you're ignoring a very large segment of the population who absolutely do. The problem with our medical system is in large part that when you go to the doctor, 9 out of 10 times, they're not interested. You know what I got told when I went to the neurologist? Oh, I asked about diet. Oh, diet? Yeah, you should follow what the American Heart Association says. Okay, honey, you don't know jack shit about food is all you just told me. So they don't ask. They don't. They do medical system, regular traditional medicine doctors, ask them how much time they spend studying nutrition. Ask them. They'll tell you almost nothing.
How much time do holistic doctors spend studying
a
medicine?
A ton of time.
No, they don't.
Of course
Absolutely
they do.
not. These people don't go to med school. These people don't.
Of course they are. They're all MDs. No. Every single holistic doctor that I've seen is an MD. Every single one. Every single one. Every single one. And I also don't think you should poo-poo Chinese medicine. I think there's a bunch of other areas of medicine that have been poo-pooed by
people
the
that
way,
are acupuncturists and people that are chiropractors. These people don't go to medical school. You know that, right? They don't have to go to medical school for it.
I'm not talking about acupuncturists. Okay. I'm talking about MDs that the MDs oftentimes, by the way, that go through the regular traditional system, they get their medical degree, they go watch people continuously get sick, get drug dependent, not get better, and then go found innovative medicine practices or things like that and functional medicine practices to actually get people better and succeed at that every single day. It happens all over the country.
If it happens all over, then you do research on it, you publish the results, and then those become the new therapies that are recommended for people with those types of diseases. You're
acting like there's not a big bracket of a system that needs that big pharma stuff to get out there because they need a dependent sick society. That's a totally different.
Just as much as the supplement systems, none of which is regulated, by the way, needs these people to push those like ultra shots of vitamin C and the what do they do in Miami here where you can go and get the $300 vitamin infusion, all of that stuff.
I know what you're talking
about. All of these people are just as much pushing any of that stuff as the big pharma guys is. The only difference is the big pharma guys has the FDA and every other part of the private market breathing down their neck to make sure they're not messing up. Whereas these guys can say literally whatever they want.
Oh,
the
Steven.
FDA. That's right, yes.
Stephen, you're well aware that people who work at the FDA and people who work at the CDC and people who work in big pharma are essentially a rotating door of the same employees over and over again.
What is a single industry where that's not the case?
You're talking about the ability.
Are you going to say that somebody that ran in NASCAR is going to go work at the FDA next? Of course. Are you going to tell me that somebody that was working very high up in a pharmaceutical company is probably going to be involved in the regulatory process?
Do people who work at NASCAR ultimately have a decision about the health of you and your family? These are major medical institutions that are holding hands.
They're not holding hands.
And
There's
have
going
a
to
deep
be
investment in a sick population.
I never worked in mainstream media in my life, but I guarantee you that you probably see a lot of similar video guys, a lot of similar editor guys, a lot of people in the newsroom are showing up in other places because that's the industries that they work in. If I'm looking at who's going to, it's reality.
That's absolutely absurd.
It is, and in every single industry I've ever, you've got in professional video games, the people that are the players grow up to be the coaches.
So you don't see how it could be dangerous to have somebody from the FDA who prior worked for Pfizer come in, step into the FDA, and now want to push Pfizer products? You don't see how that could potentially be problematic?
But here's the issue that conservatives have when they criticize big anything is they always go, couldn't this be a problem?
It is a problem.
Then it is a problem. If it is a problem, then you have to show me the problem.
Did you watch Dope Sick?
What?
Did you watch Dope Sick?
No, what's that?
Watch it. Just watch it.
Can you
Come
summarize
back.
it for me? I watch a lot of Project Veritas. I've done a lot of vaccine and COVID-19 research. I've done a lot of...
No, this is a great thing because you're in Miami, right?
Yeah.
Go watch Dope Sick, then come back and we'll have a bigger... I don't want to spend the whole time on pharmaceuticals today because I want to get to body count, which I think is fascinating. Yes, Tyler's like this too, but I'm loving the discussion. Audience, by the way, hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Do we have super chat button?
We have some super chats.
Okay, let's go.
Pay for the studio.
So real quick, I put a poll up, 429 votes. 67% of the audience believe that we should switch to a socialized medicine.
Wow,
that's my commies in chat. They're all
you
out
brought,
there.
you brought the,
yeah, the
he brought the commies in.
My tri-coms, my fellow, yes, they're all there. My red Soviet.
Don't worry.
So real quick, $5 super chat. If Destiny believes you can live happily on $60K, will he not donate? Why will he not donate every dime he makes over $60K and move back to Nebraska?
So something that's difficult for people that have made it is oftentimes they don't realize that they're the exception. I am the exception in a lot of different ways. I wouldn't recommend my lifestyle or the types of things that I do for other people. But that being said, if you look at me, if people treated money the way that I did, I wouldn't mind everybody trying to be a millionaire. I'm a millionaire, and if you look at the car that I drove here in a $40,000 car. The apartment I live in is it's a $3,500 a month apartment, but it's not a $7,000 a month apartment. That's it. That's all I own. All of the rest of my money goes into...
Why do you care what everybody else owns, though?
The problem that I have is I see people destroy their lives trying to find
So the thing with the income argument is always going to be based around what
Happiness.
lifestyle you're trying to achieve versus what kind of lifestyle you think you're entitled to. Right? So if you're trying to achieve a certain lifestyle, right, that's not based around just simply being able to afford, different things. You want some of those luxury items, you want some of those, yeah, the convenience factor, if you will. Then yeah, making the argument that 60K, especially in America, probably not gonna cut it. But if you're not really materialistic and you're just trying to save, you're trying to just, budget, you're not really, you're not buying a whole bunch of crazy things and stuff like that, you really don't need all that much money in order to live a comfortable lifestyle. Now, to be fair, I believe that number is closer to 74, not 60. 60 might be okay if we're talking about like a single individual. But overall, like, there is a certain income threshold, if you will, that dictates whether a single or a household is able to, live comfortably in America, be able to afford a simple emergency, not be stuck all the time, being able to take a vacation here or there. I think that's the point that Destiny's, alluding to.
Your materialistic possessions.
So let me
and
ask
they're
you this honest
foregoing
question.
relationships to actually get there.
Fair- okay.
I live a very simple lifestyle. If I were to, I could live. If
I do
I
as
lost
well.
some money, I could live at 40, 50, 60K a year.
But
for sure.
well, okay. So let's say somebody said to you, you believe, but the question is, you believe that on say 60K, somebody
You could
can
be
live,
happy.
be happy. Okay, so why don't you give all your money over 60K away? Just give it all away to charity and live at 60K and be happy.
I'm not telling you that having more money.
That's gotta be the dumbest extra. I hate when people do that. That's like when people talk about green energy. People go, well, why don't you just sell your car and ride your bike and take a horse and buggy and shit? Like you, that don't even make any sense. Like at this point, you're just saying stuff to be petty.
Money is bad. If you want to go after more money, that's fine. I like having my more money, but I also enjoy the work that I do to get there. But I don't do it at the sacrifice or the detriment to the rest of my life. If I could make 2x or 3x or 5x the money that I make if I were to do things that I didn't like, if I were to sacrifice my personal relationships, or if I were to grind work even harder, I could, but I don't. But I'm not, earlier I told you, there are some people that want to build businesses. There's some people that have the talent to be an athlete or some sort of business or whatever. That's fine, do it.
Ooh,
but just
my
because you're
name is
not doing that
terrible.
doesn't make you a failure or a loser.
Yeah,
I was
so-
happy when I worked my casino job when I worked in Nebraska. I was probably making 30, 36K a year. I think
But
15 to
that's
20
you.
to an hour.
And somebody else might not feel that way. Everybody's happiness is going to look different. I
Throughout
understand.
all
Listen,
of human
I
history,
understand the
we've been
message.
happy without airplanes, cell phones, and internet. If you think you need all of it now, you're probably
I
the problem
understand. I
because you are a aberration from everything that's
I
come before you.
understand the message of a holistic life. Like, I get it. I get that, it can't be all work and no play. It can't, family is important. I understand leisure is important. I understand sleep is important. Health is important. Just mind rest, which honestly, I don't know how you're on the computer so much because my mind goes crazy. That's a whole other thing, is getting off of the technology sometimes, getting out into like the real world with light, sunshine, and trees and all that stuff. I get it. But the message should then be positive, like, hey, listen, you can go for whatever makes you happy, but just don't forget all this stuff, because this stuff also can accentuate your life in a big
And if
way.
that was the message, I'm A-okay with that.
Okay.
But a lot of the hustle culture stuff seems to be a little
In other
bit
words,
extreme.
he's not giving up his money. He's not giving up his money to go down to 60.
And I wouldn't tell anybody to give their money up. Of course
Yeah.
not. I haven't told that to a single person. This is like the
Liberals
answer of
say it
like
all the time.
this is like the answer of like, I think we should be higher taxes. Well, why don't you donate all of your money to
Yeah,
the
why
federal
not?
government? Because me donating all of my money doesn't change anything.
It does. It makes you then loyal to what you said, which is that
No, it doesn't, because now you're essentially relying on charity to do the government's job. Right? And that gets to the heart of why trickle down economics is so stupid. And that's why it gets to when people use that conservative argument, and especially around donating, that's why it's so dumb, because it's like, in order for something to be functional, you have to hope and pray that the people with extra funds decide to do the right thing, or not even do the right thing. You're hoping that they decide to share some of their extra table scraps with everyone else. And that's just like, sometimes that's a superiority complex kind of argument. that's not even a pick yourself up by the bootstraps. It's just, I don't know. That is just a really weird argument to make.
People should pay
I'm
high
not
taxes.
loyal to people paying higher taxes. I'm loyal to there being a bigger social safety net, more government programs, and higher taxes. How that happens?
Because those are effective at getting people in better shape.
In better shape.
Yeah, like public schools.
Where do you think most of the fat people live? Do you think they're in rural communities or liberal city
We should
communities?
encourage them to not be fat.
They're in rural communities,
should
right?
encourage them to
With
not
all
be
the
fat.
natural cows and the natural pigs and all the like.
We should encourage them to not be fat.
I agree, sure.
And not be dependent on the system. Let's go. Tyler.
Marcus gave $2. Said elites send their kids to school for networking. Marcus gave another $5. Said the worst financial decisions of my life were 1, going to school for engineering, and 2, entertaining a serious relationship at the same time.
Well, that is challenging. People, you ever hear from doctors all the time that are in medical school and say they're trying to like.
Somebody just said in super chat in that stream that going to school for engineering was one of the worst decisions they've made. Is that because they just don't like engineering and just realized that like, that wasn't something they wanted to do, or is there something else here? Because they're recruiting these guys out the gate from college. Like, you get, especially an engineer, man, that's a layup if you make it through that school. You know, obviously it's not just a bachelor, you know, so some engineering degrees you need the master's or higher. But even with the BA, man, depending on what you got in engineering, man, them things are a layup.
Do a serious relationship and do medical school, and they like go insane. Just a side note.
That's why I failed college, arguably, is because I was working like 60, 70 hours a week and trying to do full-time school at the same time. It wasn't possible because I was working graveyard shifts.
Yeah,
so.
you can't. And that's the other message. You can't, like I always say this to people, you can't do everything all the time. Like there's got to be, sometimes you can only do something some of the time, and you got to have that balance. Something's got to give. You only have 24 hours in a day. Anything else we got to get to?
Andrew, $10. All the doctors I've been to in the USA prioritize prescribing drugs.
Yeah, of course.
The eat healthy and exercise is always a footnote. Also, no one is talking about the role of trauma in society's health. And then Ajron gave $5. Which do you like better, frogs or dinosaurs?
You're asking me to eat.
I don't think you can eat a dinosaur.
You can eat
nowadays.
frogs.
You can eat frogs.
Yeah. I've
Frog
never
legs.
eaten a frog. Frog legs, that's a big thing. Where is that? Where do you eat frog?
We did in Nebraska. I think they do in Wisconsin, Illinois.
Yeah.
Louisiana,
frog leg. And they're supposed
Florida.
to. Everything
yeah,
you
that's not
ask,
too, yeah.
I always ask people, what do they taste like? Tastes like chicken. Everything tastes like chicken somehow when you ask people. Isn't that
So does
crazy?
you ever had
Frogs or
gator?
dinosaurs? Dude, no, I didn't have gator, and I'm not going to have gator.
Gator tastes like chicken.
Frogs or dinosaurs? Why are they asking me that?
Frogs or dinosaurs?
I'm going to go for a dinosaur. Frog looks slimy to me. I don't like slimy. Plus, if there's dinosaurs, it's going to be cool. That means I went back in my DeLorean, people, and I'm not in 2022 anymore. That's a good thing.
All right, I got one more
Yeah.
for Steven. Airborne gave $10. Said if Steven says he doesn't sacrifice his income for what he wants, why isn't he in Diamond League? Or why isn't he
That's
Diamond?
That's
in
a League of Legends joke. We don't do those here.
I don't know what that means.
It's a horrible video game.
I don't know anything about video games.
Oh, you're better off for it, probably.
Yeah, you know what I know about? Super Mario Brothers. That's about as far as I got, and I wasn't very good at it. I did kill I thought it was a dragon at the time, but apparently it's what is it at the end? Is it like a turtle or something?
Bowser?
Yeah,
Bowser.
see,
It's
I'm not nerdy about I don't know. Okay, I want to ask you quickly about this is the last one we'll do today. The national divorce. I think is a really, really interesting conversation. I remember this being brought up to me a few years ago, and I was always someone who didn't support that. You know, I would say, listen, we all have to figure out a way to have a conversation with each other. We all have to be able to, not that we have to agree, but we should be able to sit down. We're one country, you know, under God, all this stuff. And that's just how I felt about it for a very long time. And now I hear it, and I really feel that there are a lot of policies of the left that are so extremely damaging that I don't want them becoming reframing what this country is. And I'm starting to get behind, like, hey, the left and the right see the world so fundamentally differently in 2022. It's not just a political conversation about taxes or, you know, regulation or green energy. It's very deeply personal about these woke policies, about, you know, gender activism when it comes to kids, about school choice, about that. I can see how people would say maybe we're just too different to be one. And am I worried that the policies of the other will infiltrate the country at large? We see the world very differently. So I think it's an interesting, do you support?
I'm not sure if we actually see the world differently. The biggest issue is that we all have the same, we're all using different information And based off that different information, we all have different ideas of what the problem is. And that gets to the heart of America. Like, as American history and things like that, we don't learn the same things. Never mind state to state, district to district, zip code to zip code. We don't learn the same things. And so we start thinking that we're completely different as Americans, even though if we really learned the same things and understood what our country is and isn't, foundationally, we'd be on the same page. But right now, it appears like we're fundamentally different people, and we're really not.
Support that in any way? Could you see a world where, forget about whether it will happen,
Yeah,
but
so here-
is that
this
the right path in some respects?
Okay, this is a valuable lesson I learned in a video game. I played a video game. I had a large group of people that I managed in the video game. And sometimes in that game, we had to make a decision about what was the next type of spaceship we were going to fly. And it's fun to have like a few people in the leadership be like, we're going to make this spaceship. Like, let's just do that. And that'd be awesome. And there was a lesson that I learned. Somebody suggested me this idea. And he said, anytime you want to do a particular thing, you should appoint at least one person on the other end to make arguments against it. And I found that when we went to do things in the future, it was always a really good idea. Because what would happen is if everybody wants to do one thing, you can very quickly get lost in this where you go farther and farther, you're like, whatever. And you need one person on the other end there to kind of keep you grounded. Because at the very least, even if you ultimately go in that direction, at least they're like, well, at least consider this, remember that, or like, don't forget to factor in this thing. At least they're there to kind of hold you to.
Right.
Yeah. So something that's happened in U.S. politics and worldwide, and I think the internet has contributed a lot to this, is in some ways we've become so ideologically homogenous in the country. It feels like we're getting more and more different. But I think what's actually happening is two groups are forming that are becoming more and more the same, where the right is completely pulled away from the left is completely pulled away from the right, and now on the right, they're having these conversations that are fucking wild to me. And on the left, they're having these, like on the right, it's like our election was stolen, the vaccine is, you think, mind control or whatever, and on the left,
I
it's
didn't
like,
say that. I just didn't want it.
And then on the left, it's, you know, like people are trans at 2 years old, and, you know, trans women and cis women are exactly the same competition, and we should have 55 an hour minimum wage. Like, and there's no more, I noticed this the most with the minimum wage argument, that when we were all kind of like here for minimum wage, it's like 15 an hour, 15 an hour, maybe 12 an hour, now 15 an hour, 15 an hour. But now that they've like totally fractured, people are like 15 an hour is slave labor. 25 an hour is the starting point. I was like, oh my God, what happened to the conversation there? But you're only surrounded by other left-leaning people. I think you said something that we see the world very differently, like the different groups in America. I agree with that, but I think that like 99% of humans are fundamentally the exact same. Like most of us want to like work so that we feel like we're contributing to society, come home, have families, have a little bit of fun. Like broadly speaking, that's where we're all at. And we're going to get into the weeds on stuff like gay issues or some social stuff. But for the most part, I think most people want the same thing. I think that as the groups have drawn out separately, I think the issue that we get into is people view the other side as having this fucking hatred for like their own people. So I can speak on the vaccine thing. When I look at people like you, who I would call anti-vaxxers or whatever.
I'm not an anti-vaxxer.
Okay, anti-coronavirus vaccine, right?
No, I just believe that people should be able to make the decision for themselves and not be mandated for.
You use the term express.
You just see, this is what I'm saying. Like, we get back and forth with people making decisions for themselves, but then the moment she finds something immoral with anything, she wants the government to come in and pass legislation that goes against that. And it's like, okay, you want people to make the decision for themselves because what they choose on themselves isn't violating someone else's rights. But then if you don't morally agree with it, you want legislation to ban them from being able to make that choice that still doesn't violate your rights in any way, shape, or form. Like, come on, man. That's being a hypocrite. You're contradicting yourself now.
Experimental
scientific.
Vaccine. Sure.
It is an experimental vaccine.
Sure.
It's not.
Not anymore. It's FDA approved.
Oh,
Just like all the monoclonal antibodies.
Isn't that convenient?
That's how the approval process works.
Was it an experimental vaccine when it came out?
Well, every vaccine when it
okay.
goes through experimental
So then my
stages.
terminology is correct.
Well, no, because now it's an FDA approved vaccine. It's not experimental.
I've been talking about an experimental vaccine for 2 years. It was an
well, every
experimental
single vaccine is originally
just because
experimental.
something gets FDA approval overnight, by the way, doesn't mean that it's not experimental.
What does experimental mean? Is experimental
So
stands for I don't like
the
it?
day of difference. So the FDA approves it, and it was an experimental vaccine yesterday, but today it's not. What makes it not experimental?
Experimental is a human concept.
No,
yes, it's experimental, but and then
What
when the
makes it not
experiment ends, we say that.
What makes it not experimental is that it's time tested, and it's not time tested, so it's still experimental.
Which, you know that like when flu vaccines come out, those are created every season. Those all experimental.
This is experimental technology.
Are the flus all experimental to you?
The mRNA technology is experimental technology. There still aren't even adequate studies
When
on
is
it
it
for many groups of people.
Well, adequate.
That's why you have.
So when does the mRNA technology not become experimental? Is it in 10 years?
Typically,
20 years?
when most vaccines come out, it's years of testing. When you have vaccines
I'm
that
asking
come out
you,
for childhood
when are you going to
vaccines,
say that the mRNA vaccines aren't
several
experimental?
years of testing where you have
So by
information.
2030, assuming that everything's fine, you're like, okay, they're not experimental.
10 years of testing. Yeah, that's what I would expect to see on a new experimental technology. I would expect to see, because side effects don't unfold overnight. Some do.
Well, for vaccines, it's 2 months about. You're not going to see side effect 12 months later. The vaccine
That's
doesn't stay in your
absurd.
body.
That's actually not medically accurate. But carry on.
That is absolutely medically accurate.
Not
but
true. That's why they do on childhood vaccines. That's why on other vaccines they have extended testing for.
of course, we always look for extended testing. But for any vaccine that's been FDA approved,
bottom line, listen.
Okay, wait.
Whether,
No,
whether
wait.
No. Whether I chose to get the vaccine or
Sure.
not, labeling it experimental is accurate. It's experimental vaccine.
Okay.
Take it or.
Right, but isn't every like a lot of the vaccines that are being that are developed, they come from a scenario where it's not in an emergency situation. Right? So you got time, they don't have a massive amount of funding. And so couldn't it be that one of the reasons why the vaccine for COVID came out quickly and it didn't happen overnight? Could one of the reasons be that why the vaccine came out quickly was because there was global funding from all sort of countries going through this pandemic, pouring money into the vaccine. And so these scientists had essentially unlimited funding to just do as many experiments as possible, effectively and efficiently as possible. Right? Like some of the times it does come down to how much funding you have, you know, when you're budgeting, whether it's monthly, yearly, stuff like that. And so if you got an unlimited budget, you can do a whole bunch of things at the same time to help, you know, get the results, or at least, you know, rule out certain things that you need to rule out.
Or not, but that is not my position. My position is
Gotcha.
you should be able to. I don't care if somebody wants to inject themselves with arsenic. By the way, it's
Okay.
up to them.
I understand. What about drugs?
Up to them.
Cool. Okay. When I look at your position, okay, I'm 99% sure that you are thinking in your mind that this is the best thing for most of the people in the country, that people ought to have the right to do this thing. You're not thinking like, I want to fuck some people over, or I hate these blah, blah, blah.
I'm
you
thinking
think,
you should be able to make the decision for yourself.
Sure. And then the people on the left who get a little bit crazy and are like, I want up to, I want children, everybody vaccinated, mandatory, blah, 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 blah. Even if there is evidence showing like, well, for young boys, is it worth the risk? I don't know.
Right.
I have to assume that they also want what's best for the country, that they want what's best for people. They think that they have the right answer, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't start from a place where you genuinely believe everybody is coming from the best of intentions, that they have like the best hopes, at least the voters, I can understand thinking that like maybe for some businesses they've got like misincentives or misaligned incentives, but at least for the voters, if you don't start from there, everything is already lost. You have to assume that when I'm talking to a guy that says that gay marriage should be illegal and it's horrible, blah, 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 the reason why he's saying that is because he thinks that certain LGBT issues are toxic or corrosive to the fabric of the country. He must believe it, yeah. So
fundamentally believing that people are good.
Yeah, we have to believe that. And I think that part of that belief is having these interactions with each other, right? I can see somebody with a Blue Lives Matter, back the blue, MAGA, all this, blah, 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 blah. And I can say that person, think, they're not necessarily a horrible person because my mom is like that. She's a Cuban, and I know my mom. My mom is not a hateful, evil, horrible person, but she's also an insane fucking Trump supporter, okay? But it's not because she hates liberals and she hates the country.
But that's not where we are in 2022, unfortunately.
I understand, but that's why I'm talking to you, right? That's what
No, that's great. I could walk away here today and say, Steven seems like a nice guy.
Sure, but a lot of people aren't like that. I agree, yeah.
That's just not realistic, though, because people,
It
and
has
I
to
think
be.
the last 2 years, though,
Yeah,
I
go
really think the last 2 years made that so much worse. And it was just
coronavirus
my
made everybody
experience
crazy.
too. Like it made everyone crazy, but it really just made it like you're the enemy in a way I hadn't seen in my lifetime. Perfect example was like I went on The View and I didn't get the vaccine. It was just a personal decision at the time, by the way, a decision I made with my own doctor saying this isn't for you based on your medical history. I wouldn't do this. You already had COVID. We know what that looks like. It was no big deal. This is my advice for you. That was why I made the initial decision. And I went on there with people that I knew and had worked with and really just wanted to talk about mandates and my view that essentially I felt felt that this was a very personal decision because it was new and a lot of, studies hadn't been done on a lot of groups of people. Just let people make the decision with their doctors. And if you get it, good for you. And if you don't get it, I'm okay with that, whatever. And I was just shouted down on second one as misinformation by people who were Sonny was at my wedding. So I realized in that moment, like, wow, we're in a dark time.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. And I think when you see, cable news thrives on division. They
off
thrive
the,
on screaming. I worked in there, in that medium for a very long time. Politicians are always thriving on you're the enemy, you're this and you're that. So it's very hard for people to look at each other as not the enemy when that paradigm is reinforced everywhere. They turn the TV on, it's reinforced. They look at a politician they like, it's reinforced. Politicians can't win without being like, you're the enemy, you're what's wrong. So I just don't think it's realistic. That's what I'm saying. In 2022, is it realistic to think that, or are we now at a point where a national divorce is coming because people can't see each other as people anymore?
This is the issue. This is what I think is the issue, okay? I'm 33 years old, so I kind of grew up with the internet. It started to become a thing really like when I was older than like 10 is when people were using more like AOL keywords and stuff.
Yeah.
And then even before me, there's this feeling of when you grow up in an area, to some extent, you kind of have to be able to get along with the people next to you. You're going to have to make your views somewhat commensurate because these are the people that you see every day. These are the people. If you have some insane fucking beliefs, those are going to either get weeded out or you're going to be the town weirdo, okay? Because nobody's going to be able to figure you out, okay? If you wanted to have sex with toasters in 1970, everybody's going to know you're weird. If I want to have sex with toasters...
Not in 2022.
No, because I can go online and I can find the best toaster fucking community that gives me all the best models and I can have 7,000 other people reinforce
But what if
their
somebody
opinion.
identifies as a toaster?
True.
Just saying.
But the internet has given us, in some ways, this beautiful ability to find other people. And in some ways, the worst thing is that we can find anybody we want. And it's let us not challenge our opinions and not be forced to make...
That is just like the military, man. That's why I like social media. Because the great thing about social media is that it can bring a whole bunch of people together. The worst thing about social media is that it can bring a whole bunch of people together.
Commensurate ideas we have with people around us, because a lot of people, I don't even know who my neighbors are, but I can tell you like 15,000 people on this internet forum that all believe that either Trump or Hillary is the actual demon spawn that's going to lead us into World War III. And that, I think, is like the key problem, is how divided we've gotten and how uncommunicative we've gotten with other people
That's
around
true
us.
too. We don't communicate, and the fact that we don't know our neighbors is a problem.
Yeah,
it's a big societal problem.
To further that, because you talk about like the national divorce, if we did a national divorce, this is what would happen. If that happened, then there'd be another national divorce. Because here's what would happen on the left side, okay? We do the national divorce. Thank God we got rid of all the Republicans. Well, now you've got AOC and the progressives looking at like Biden, and they're going like, why are you guys the new Republicans? You guys are crazy.
You got to do another split.
Exactly. And then on the Republican side, no offense, but like all the Daily Wire people are fighting with all the Turning Point USA people, which fight with all the alt-righters, which fight with some of the Trump people. Everybody on the right fights, It's funny because on the left, we always think that we only infight, but I've spent more time at right-leaning communities, and I didn't realize that so many people on the right.
Yes.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of
and the gossip behind the scenes and everybody. So as soon as so this is kind of my thing. The United States of America has been an awesome experimental 250 years later, still an experiment, in that we've gotten so many different types of people together under one roof, and we've kind of made it work. It's been a little bit rocky at times, but damn, we're the biggest country in the world. We're like the leaders of freedom and democracy, some people would say. We've done a lot of really cool stuff in a relatively short amount of time, and in a long amount of time. We got the oldest living constitution. We've done a lot of cool stuff. We have to believe a fundamental underpinning of liberalism with a capital L is that lots of different people can exist together and can find a way to make it work. And when we start talking about things like a national divorce,
definitely, like Destiny's, there's some things I don't agree with him or the way he frames it, but the foundation, yeah. And I'm really getting tired of people who try to claim like our country, like the experiment has failed. The exact opposite is true. Like this country, we got a lot of things we got to work on. We got a lot of baggage we got to clear up. There's a lot of generational trauma and past that we all need to address. But if you think that if the American experiment has failed, you are clearly living in a different matrix than everyone else. Because that can't be furthest from the truth.
What we're really talking about is we're undermining the concept of liberalism with a capital, not like being liberal conservative, but like the idea of like freedom of speech and democracies with different people living with each other. And that's a scary concept to me.
Too many people in the country don't even support that anymore. I mean,
yeah, I know, we got to bring them back to it. Yeah, bring them back. That's not good.
Censorship, it's a disaster.
That's
Tyler,
the question.
I'm going to check in with you once more. Do you have anything for us? Otherwise, I want to ask about 2024. This will be our last question. I actually wasn't.
Yeah.
So you said in the beginning that you think Biden's going to run again.
I think Biden's going to win again. He's going to win again. Oh
Tyler,
my goodness.
He's just yanking my chain now. Okay, Biden's not going to run again. Here's why Biden's not going to run again. I'll tell you
another $20.
What I think is going to happen. I got $20 for this one.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Biden's not going to run again because he doesn't know who he
is.
is. He doesn't know where he is, and they know they can't run him again because he clearly has a medical condition. I'm not going to say it's dementia because I'm not a I'm not a holistic doctor, so I wouldn't know.
You're not an MD.
See how
certified.
do you see how I went?
Yeah,
just that around?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't get enough diet and exercise, man.
well, probably not. But he's got enough boosters. There's that. Anyway, so I don't think it's going to be him, but. And I'm curious. I was going to ask you who you think it is going to be, but you think it's going to be Biden. So
I feel like the incumbent advantage is like so big. This is one of the reasons why it would be really scary to run Trump again and for Trump to win is because he can't run again.
Well, let me ask you this though. Let's say it wasn't Biden. Can we just assume for a second? Let's say it wasn't. Who do you think it would be? Because everyone's talking about Gavin Newsom, and I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
So it's so much.
There's not anybody from the left or right, Republican or Democrat, that's going to run in 2024, that's going to do anything to unite anybody. Like, I think the midterms have definitely proven that two things: this country is definitely divided, but we're also looking for some sort of unifying force. Americans need to be reminded that that unifying force, that ideal, is not going to come from a man. It's going to come from us that transcends political parties. It's just the reality.
Much changes in 6 months, right? Like 6 months ago, I think it was 3 months ago, it was basically like gas prices were like $27 a gallon. Like I remember I think in Miami Beach, I want to say I saw over $7 a gallon. I was like, oh my God, it's over. But I mean, like we've seen gas prices fall a lot.
Yeah.
The economy changes, different things are happening, foreign policy wise, domestic policy wise.
Yeah, but if you had to today, let's just say
if I had today, how popular is Newsom nationally? Because when I lived in California, man, the opinions on him were split sometimes. Although I lived in some conservative areas sometimes too.
Who else would it be?
I don't know right now.
Okay.
Who else are the like besides Newsom?
I think it's going to be Newsom. Honestly, I think it's going to be Newsom. I don't think it's going to be Biden, and Kamala's just. I don't know what to say about that.
Sure, it would never be Kamala, I don't think.
No, she's really profoundly terrible at delivering a message. There's enough video. I mean, you don't have to trust me on that, audience. Just go watch her. But I'm curious, from your perspective, who would you, from Republican side, because we're looking at really Trump, DeSantis. That's what's going to be one of these two. Who would you prefer it be? I think it's pretty clear. You're going to say Trump, right? You prefer Democrats have to run against Trump.
For like political strategy, who would I prefer to be in power?
No.
Just for the best representation for my fellow Americans who happen to be conservative, I really hope it's DeSantis, because, guys, Trump is an embarrassment for you guys. You have to remember, my fellow conservative Americans, Trump is an absolute embarrassment. At least you got to give DeSantis this. He was able to rally the troops and really make some gains in Florida. For God's sakes, he turned Miami-Dade red. Trump would never be able to do that. Like, that's the kind of gains that you got to give DeSantis credit for. And I'm not really a conservative American or vote Republican, but that's just the reality, man. Like, DeSantis, as of right now, is the best representation for real conservatism. Trump is just a grifter.
Who you would prefer? Like, you get to pick who Democrats get to run against, who they're more likely to beat.
Who are they most likely to beat? Oh man,
Trump or DeSantis. That's what's good.
I think they're more likely to beat Trump, because I think Trump makes more Democrat voters mad than DeSantis would.
Okay, and you're in Florida. How do you feel about DeSantis?
I don't like that very much, but
okay, he's very popular here.
Yeah, but
yeah, he's very popular.
I'm very liberal. I'm very lefty.
I'm curious. Do you understand?
I just moved here like 6 months ago. So.
Okay, so where did you move from?
California, Newsom.
Okay, so what's really interesting, that's fascinating.
Yep.
You and a whole bunch of other liberals left a liberal, rotting place and came to Florida. How fascinating. Why'd you do that?
Crazy.
Why'd you do that?
My wife really likes beaches, and
Oh, it's just the beaches?
Well, it's
because
the
they have
beaches.
beaches in California, you know.
Not that you can swim in it year round. The beaches in California, though, some of them
Is
are
that why you came
way-
here for the beaches? Let's be honest.
It is the beaches. She likes tropical weather, and it's the time zone, because when we do video content here, we can stream to Europe.
Do you think that most liberals left California and New York City because of beaches and the time zone to come to Florida? I'm just
Probably
curious.
affordability is a big one.
It's very expensive, actually, right now in Florida to rent.
I know, actually, because my rent is really high. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like
That's not
it could be, well, affordability is one of those things.
Like affordability is weird because that's still gonna depend on where exactly you're moving to. Like if I tell somebody I'm moving to New York, right? But I'm moving to New York, like somewhere mainland New York and not the island, not New York City, that cost of living is still, even though it might be relatively high, it's still going to be a lot different than trying to live in, say, Manhattan or Brooklyn or something like this. And it's the same thing with Florida too. Like, sure, you might look at the tax rate and think it's cheaper, but is it really cheaper if you move to Miami? Right? I'm sure if you moved, 40, 50 minutes out of Miami, it might be cheaper. But if you're moving into the county itself or the area where it's Orlando, Tampa, Miami, whatever, I mean, at that point, it don't really matter about taxes and things like that because it's still expensive. The cost of living is about the same.
Things, taxes, another thing.
Taxes.
The general
Low taxes.
Yeah, the lack of support for the city.
That's why they came to Florida.
I don't know why any particular person moves. For me,
Oh,
taxes are insanely high, and the city is not supported with my tax money.
Oh, you mean in California?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, do you understand as a liberal? Because oftentimes I'll have these conversations.
I
with
remember.
liberals.
Hold on. I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska for 30 years. So
Okay.
I
So
understand.
do you understand why people move to cities that have low taxes and that have freedom is prioritized for its citizens? And DeSantis, one of the reasons people came to Florida actually was DeSantis primarily. I don't think it was Florida.
Okay.
I think it was DeSantis because he was the guy that was on the front lines and he was battling a lot of the mandates. And people who were coming from mandate-rich turf like California and New York and were exhausted by lockdowns and mask mandates and vax mandates came to a place where they felt that they could just make their own decisions. That was really the appeal of Florida for the last 2 years. I don't know what it will be in the future.
I mean, Florida has always been like the final.
So what's been the appeal of Florida prior to the last 2 years? Right, because DeSantis ain't been around forever. And people still move to Florida. Right, a lot of older people retire in Florida. But why is that? Is that because of the taxes? Or is it because a lot of people, like for example, here in the Midwest, right? Here up in Ohio, people are gonna move, or older people try to move simply because the cold weather like really messes up their body. Like especially if you got arthritis and you're cold and everything like that, it really messes with your bones, man. And some people, retirees or people who are in the best conditions, sometimes they move because just the difference in weather can make all the difference. Sometimes it's not even, I think some people put too much emphasis on government structure, but that's because we still talk about different states like as if they're different countries. Gotta remember, guys, we're still moving within the same country, right? And a lot of things it could be from, there's so many different reasons for why a particular person might move. Now, there definitely seems to be a more streamlined version for why wealthy people move. Starting to see that wealthy people tend to move because they see a state where they can do the same thing and not pay any income taxes. A lot of people don't want to highlight that, but there's never one reason why somebody moves.
Retiree destination for a lot of Americans. Like a lot of Americans. My parents have lived down here for I think like 10 years.
Yeah, but I'm talking about young people, 30s, 40s. They're not retiring. They're coming down to
I
Florida.
don't know how many young people could afford to move to Florida. I don't know if there's been like tens of thousands or hundreds
There's
of
a
thousands
lot.
or whatever.
30s, 40s is a
Work
lot.
from home maybe affected that too because they were able to work long distance.
But why come to Florida?
Why? Probably because it's it's either Florida or Texas, right?
Right,
Because
but
there are no
why-
income tax states.
But why aren't people moving to New York and California?
Why would? Because it's a higher cost of living, higher income tax.
Okay. So you're making a case for what I'm making a case for.
What do you think I'm making a case for?
You're making a case for lower taxes and more opportunity.
is there no one moving out of Florida or out of Texas to other places though? Like, is this just a one-way thing? I understand that because of the cost of living, you're gonna have maybe more from a Cali or New York move somewhere else. But I'm pretty sure there's people who also live in Florida and Texas who would like to move or who have moved. And then some people who like to move but can't afford to.
I'm making the case for the opportunity I'm going to have is probably going to be the same almost everywhere because it's a federal.
Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people in general.
Sure. Well, the opportunity depends. You're probably going to have more opportunity in California for a lot of things than depending on the type of job you're wearing. There's a reason why it's like the tech capital, Silicon Valley of the world.
To keep more of your hard-earned cash, though. Here's the point I'm making.
No, wait. Hold on.
To keep more of your money.
This is the issue that I have. Okay.
Keeping more of your money in your pocket only counts if you're not having to spend it to make up for something that you lost somewhere else. So let's say, for example, right, I live in a place that has both, the state taxes here in Ohio is like 7-8%, something like that, right? Sales tax. Right. So, but what am I receiving in general from the state of Ohio compared to what am I receiving in Texas with no income state tax, or New York or Cali with higher state tax? Right. And so what's the state? And so I'm looking at Texas, right? And I go, okay, they ain't got no state taxes. That's cool. But their energy grid is damn near privatized. Their energy grid is a freaking joke. And so it's like, well, I guess technically I keep more of my money, but more of my money is going to more energy costs, and more energy costs to an energy structure that is absolute dog shit. So am I really saving money, or am I just obsessed with bigger numbers?
Before I got into streaming, I was a professional carpet cleaner. Okay. It sucked. I worked 13-day stretches. I had every other Sunday off, and I made anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Okay. And that was probably the time period of my life when I was the most conservative person. When I thought that if I work hard, if I do whatever I can build blah, 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 blah. And one of the things I realized is as I got wealthier, so many things in life became non-issues, things that were insurmountable before. So for me, it was anything related to my fucking car. If I popped a tire,
Right.
if I broke a wheel, the check engine light was on forever. Okay, you put a piece of tape over it, whatever. These are things that were just destructive to my life. And as I got older, I realized, hey, these things don't matter anymore. When I had a son,
because you had more money.
Yeah. When I had a son, I was thinking, well, what kind of school do I want to go to? I went to a Catholic school growing up. I really liked the Catholic high school. Didn't like my Catholic grade school. I wanted to go to a good public school. So I bought a house in the best public school district because I have the money to do that.
Right.
When the coronavirus stuff happened, and there's a lot of people staying home.
You need more bread? Yes. Bread to tell them. What, the umbrella? Oh, yeah. No, babe, I put that down on purpose. Yeah, but I don't want it to rust. That's why you have to put it back inside the house. I'll grab it. Okay. Get some hot cocoa or some Starbucks. Pick me up. I love you, babe.
Home, and I look at like what my son does in the class, what he does at home. When my son comes home in first grade, he has an iPad that is rented to them. They get to take.
I worked in schools like that. I know.
That is insane to me. And one of the most upsetting things that I could think of as a parent is if I was stuck in a shitty part of the city and I didn't have the opportunities afforded to me by my parents, and my kid didn't have access to internet, technology, iPod, lunch. And I look at children who are stuck in these shitty scenarios, and before they even have a chance to step one adult foot out into the world, they're already like playing so far behind. So when I think of like social programs and taxes and all of this shit in general, I make a lot of money. If I lose an extra 50 or 100,000, you know, it sucks, but I don't really care at the end of the day.
Yep.
But if that to me is the difference between a kid getting to take home an iPad or to have a gym that's not leaky or be able to do those things, I'm okay with that trade-off. That's generally how I look at things. And I understand that for some people you like the freedom to do what you want with money. I like freedom too, and I do like the low tax here. But the reason why I left California was because I didn't feel like I was getting there for my tax money. There's homeless people everywhere. A lot of the schools have issues. Like, but if I was living in a place like Sweden or any place in France or Germany or these.
So I get why people move for those things individually, for sure. Here's where I have a problem, and it's not an indictment on the individual or individual's character. It's just an opinion. If you're in a position where you're making a lot of money and there's issues going on in your state where your tax money is not being represented the correct way, or you feel like you're not, receiving whatever, isn't the issue, isn't moving simply going to make that problem worse? Like for example, let's say I live in California. Let's say I make Destiny's money. Again, I don't know how much this guy makes. I'm not trying to be all up in his pockets, none of that. But let's say I make, $1 million a year and after taxes. If I just take my freaking cash and, how do I, I'm already. If I just take my if I'm looking at this problem, I'm like, okay, California's got a problem with the homeless crisis. We definitely got the bread, but we're not using it properly to address the homeless crisis. And then my individual solution is to then move out of the state. Don't I then still become part of the problem because the money that was there that could have been used to help solve that problem is no longer there? And so it's like essentially I've taken money that could have been used to solve this problem. And instead of just trying to vote for better leadership or advocate for better leadership, I just took my ball and went home. Right. So essentially you've added to the problem because there's now less money that if you would have just voted, or if we would vote correctly or really just try to hold our government officials accountable, then that money could be used for, to address issues the right way. But if I just remove myself and the income that I'm generating from property taxes, schools, and everything like that, then I'm just contributing not only to the main problem I got an issue with, but a whole bunch of other problems that might be currently underfunded in my state. You know what I mean? So sometimes I wish, some people will recognize that there's certain things that you wish your state would represent or would do better in, but bouncing isn't necessarily the answer either, because now you left, but the same people who aren't solving the problem are still there, right? Because now that you left, there's not going to be anybody there to freaking to just do the right thing or to vote for the right people, and that's going to be a problem.
These other countries I've been to, man, they got buses that run 24/7. Their cities are awesome. They got school. They got healthcare. Everything. I don't care if I get taxed out here because people are at least getting something for it. Sorry, that's my
and I hear what you're saying. I think it's a fundamental difference oftentimes between liberals and conservatives in terms of what you think the solutions to the problems are. So I think people can recognize problems. Like you were talking about inequality, essentially, and income inequality, and that's something that's real. And obviously, once you have money, and you do now, you're able to afford a lot more options. You're talking about, a luxury school. These private schools oftentimes can cost $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year for grade school in some cities for kids to go to school. So of course that's going to afford them more opportunities. I think where the interesting conversation happens is what's the fix. And immediately while you're talking about that, I'm thinking, well, that's why I'm an advocate for school choice. That's why I'm not an advocate for spending a ton of money on schools that waste that money and largely don't produce better teachers, better quality of education for kids. I want that single mom who's struggling to pay bills and has a child to be able to send that kid to any school in the system that she wants, because I don't want her to be districted, by the federal government.
But what do you do with the fact that these people can't drive their kids to that school? The best school for them might be on the other side of the city. It might be a 45, 50,
But
60
we're not
minute
even
drive.
affording that option, because oftentimes folks on the left shut down school choice in order to enable teachers unions, in order to enable this structure.
Right, but it's what Destiny's saying is that it's not an option. It's not a realistic option at all. You're affording a choice that it's not really a choice for people, because you just offered up an option that the majority of people can't even take advantage of. And the thing with school choice, like, I understand people, as parents, it's our responsibility to make sure we are, making sure that our children are getting a proper education. But the current way that our schools are funded, with property tax and things like that, it's just like when you're doing the school choice, you're basically, all right, my kids is not doing well. Let me go screw over these other kids and take my money out of this program or out of this district or whatever and put it in somewhere else, right? And then it's like, okay, well, at some point, I get it, we gotta make our own decisions, but can't we just have a discussion about really addressing the public education problem in this country and things like that? Because right now, the current things we're doing that thinks elevate the problem actually just makes it worse.
Structure. The problem I have with a big government structure oftentimes is that it doesn't afford flexibility to families. Like, I am a big proponent, and I'm not saying there aren't great public schools out there, because there are, but there are also terrible public schools, and I want to afford that woman the option to send her child wherever she wants, even if she may say, I'll figure out how to get him there. Can I do it? Yes, you can. You have the opportunity to do that.
If that's a big deal and you actually have the money to make that choice, why don't you just put your kid in private school? Right, there's private schools all across the country, for-profit educations, right? You could send your kids, you could use your hard-earned money to pay that tuition per year, per semester, or whatever. Just send your kid to a private school. You know what I mean? Like, but you don't want to do that. It doesn't seem like it seems like people have the option and people are arguing for the options, but then the options that are already available, they don't like those either. And it's like, oh, okay, well, are you really, is this really a problem, or are you just airing out grievances?
So I was hearing that, and I was hearing, we started this whole conversation talking about money and finances, and that what you just described to me is my reason for wanting people to have money, because money is power and money is choice. And you had said, $60,000 a year, someone can be happy, but $60,000 a year doesn't offer the same freedoms that when you have, I don't know what you make in a year, but it sounds like a lot. You're able to send your kid to that school. You're able to make decisions that you wouldn't be able to make on a $60,000 a year salary.
Sure.
So all I'm saying is that we live in a world where things are expensive. That is a reality. And by empowering people to be financially independent, whatever that looks like, and maybe that's you make $60,000, maybe that you make $60,000 or $70,000 a year, but you make a different choice about where to live, and you don't live in New York City, you live somewhere else, or maybe it's you make $200K, and for your family that's what works because there's 3 kids involved, and I don't know what everyone's individual family dynamic looks like, but money is power, money is freedom, and money is opportunity. That's just a reality. So
I just wish we had some of that opportunity without the money needing to be there. Like, no offense, I love you, Nathan, but like, you don't deserve anything. You're 11 years old. You haven't worked for anything in your life. The only reason he has the opportunities available to him that he does is because of his father. And
Right.
there's another kid out there that is probably smarter than my kid, more talented, can do whatever, and he's stuck in some horrible school where
That's
they
why-
don't even have TVs.
that's why I speak out for school choice.
School choice. His mom wouldn't be able to drive him the 45 minutes to the other end of the.
You don't know that. You don't know, and that's also why I talk about community, because
Again, this is based around how much funding through a lot of times property taxes these individual schools are getting. What Destiny's talking about is a big problem. Like, I went to a school, JFK High School, man, inner city Cleveland school. Man, our computers barely work, dust all over them. Books were all torn up. There weren't even enough books for kids to use. We had to pair up to use the school books. You can pretty much say goodbye to homework because there weren't enough books to bring home for us to really do homework. So a lot of the stuff we were doing was in school. And then on top of that, man, our teachers, yo, if our main teacher was gone, we would be sitting in that classroom by ourselves with no supervision. It's just us. What the fuck do you think we were doing in that classroom with no substitute teacher, with no one in there? You think we were studying? You think any kid is just gonna sit there and study? Like, come on.
The disintegration of community is one of the biggest problems in society, because it used to be that we lived more communally, and you would have a baby, and let's say we talk about that single mom who has a kid and finds herself in an unfortunate circumstance but wants to keep that baby. It used to be that you did know your neighbors, and that families lived more communally, and your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle were close by, and we don't live connected like that anymore. And that's a big problem because there's no one to lean on within your own family, within your own community. I remember growing up, and I lived in a little cul-de-sac, and we weren't, we didn't have a lot of money, but everybody knew each other. So if you needed somebody else's, oh, I'll watch the kids today, and there was much more a sense of that.
Sure.
So I don't think that, for me, the solution is not government. I don't believe that government is this all-powerful, all do-gooder God. I believe the
Most people don't either, even liberals.
answer is in personal responsibility, personal accountability, and the rebuilding of community as a support system for each other. And if we don't do that, you can throw all the money at a problem in the world, and it's not going to fix it if you don't have a sense of A, shared humanity, and A, shared community. So maybe we can agree on some of that.
This is I disagree, but this is like the classic tension between like the liberal and the conservative in the United States, and I think that the answer is in the middle. That the liberal tends to view problems from the top down. The government can put more money at it. We need federal legislation and laws. We need to blah, blah, blah. And the conservative tends to look bottom up, right? Well, you're not going to need this federal help if you've got neighbors, if you've got churches, if you've got communities that can help you.
right.
And yeah, the answer is there's a tension between those two things where sometimes, communities can fix problems in ways that the government is never going to be able to help with. But sometimes you need the government to come in, after 60.
Why does it have to be either or? I know somebody's going to try to call that a centrist or a moderate viewpoint, but I keep struggling to understand why that's an either or thing. Why can't we just do both? Like, and by the way, when we have government infrastructure or government policy that's based on the individual, you tend to see the communities rise up together in the interest of each other and try to make this work. Like when you do it, a lot of the times both happens concurrently. It's not either or. It's not, well, if we do it this way, then we're not going to be able to do this way. Like community, let's be clear, community is not really something that the government has control over, right? But the government can encourage it. Right. And right now we're not doing that.
For civil rights, and they need to say, listen, okay, racism in the workplace, we're not doing this anymore. The federal government's taking over here. But yeah, I understand that like the conservative mindset is one that tends to be more locally focused, and there are a lot of problems losing that. But the answer is somewhere in that tension between the two. And obviously being on the left, I fight more for the left side, but I mean, I recognize, especially coming from Omaha, the value on the right side as well, for sure.
Well, I had a great time. I hope you did too. You've certainly made me think. I think that's just something that we need more of in society, is that I invite someone like you on and I walk away and I say to my husband later, he talked about this, and I disagreed on most of it, but this came up, and it forced me to think about this a little bit more, particularly on the abortion debate.
I'm just going to have nightmares of that 19-week fetus being
it's not a fetus, it's a baby.
The baby.
Seriously speak, I'm telling you straight up, though, the losing argument for liberals on abortion, I will say this, because I think that there are a lot of people in the country who come from a good place who are pro-choice, but I think the losing argument for that is minimizing the fact that there's something very real and very special that goes on inside a woman's body in the process. And if it's just like, oh, just kill it, no big deal, you lose, because it is a person growing inside of someone. So I'm just keep in mind when you make those arguments. Seriously,
gotcha. Okay.
I'm just saying. How you could say to me, well, think about the rape, incest. That's our job is to kind of listen a little bit too, and that. Just saying, I don't think that's going to be a win.
Okay, gotcha.
Just saying, that's my advice. Tyler May. Do you have any comments or thoughts on the show, Tyler? Tyler was very quiet today. He was just observing what went back and forth. I'm curious, did the audience like it?
Yeah, they liked it.
Okay, cool.
Thought it was good. Did really well. The audience was a big fan. Really like Destiny.
Do you have anything to share?
Definitely want him back. I just thought it was an exceptionally interesting conversation.
Tyler's conservative, so you probably twisted him up a bit too.
Well, there were a lot of points in there. I said, God damn, that's a really good point. Specifically, the university point where
Rich people send their kids to.
Well, no, the point you made about conservatives need to step into these gender studies, because when there's no conservatives in the gender studies courses, then what does it do? It gets taken over and becomes an extra.
point.
It's like
I think that's an
value.
exceptionally interesting point.
Yeah, it's a problem that I have with conservatives and art in general is that like all the arts are dominated by these progressives, and I want there to be more conservative representation there, just so that like, yeah, it would just be better for it.
To make it
would,
more interesting, too.
Yeah.
That was a good way to start off the morning. Let's see what else we got.
There were a whole lot of Republicans at this, what is it called? Republican Jewish Coalition meeting who were, they weren't ruling out 2024. Some of them were overtly critical of Trump or throwing in little jabs or little sort of like passive aggressive comments here. So let me give you a few of the highlights here. One that won't be a surprise. Chris Christie, of course, has been a Trump critic for a while now. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
We keep losing and losing and losing. And the fact of the matter is, the reason we're losing is because Donald Trump has put himself before everybody else.
Is that a new thing? Like, y'all known that Republicans should have known that since, ever.
And I understand and believe in so many of the policies that were able to be accomplished during those 4 years. I mourn what more could have been done. And let's remember this. Everything that has happened in the last 2 years is because we lost that election.
So, Christie, sort of similar to Ron DeSantis, look at the scoreboard, you're tired of losing. Donald Trump is to blame. Again, not that much of a surprise coming from him because he's been a direct Trump critic for a while. But even people like Ted Cruz, and let's put this next piece up on the screen, isn't ruling out 2024. That to me, again, is a sign of some perceived weakness with Donald Trump. Cruz has, of course, continued to be a Trump ally. And when he was asked about 2024, he said, and whether he would consider it, he says, you can consider whatever you like. There will be plenty of time to discuss 2024 presidential. I get that that is a lot of fun in the media to do. There will be plenty of time for that. So Ted Cruz also not closing the door. Nikki Haley, probably the most overt in hinting at her 2024 ambitions. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
Now that the midterms are over, I'll look at it in a serious way, and I'll have more to say soon. If my family and I decide to continue our life of service, we will put 1,000% into it, and we'll finish it. For now, I'll say this. I've won tough primaries and tough general elections. I've been the underdog every single time. When people underestimate me, it's always fun. But I've never lost an election, and I'm not going to start now.
I know Nikki Haley, personal favorite of yours, Sagar.
She's just so wooden. I mean, she's a horrific politician.
Yes, she
just on a
is.
very baseline level.
She is the definition of like total donor created. Like there is no organic interest in Nikki Haley running for anything at this point. But
absolutely.
because she's got some funder telling her that they'll back her. That she's like, I'm going to run.
His name is Paul Singer, just for the record.
There
so
you go.
anyway, so these guys, all of, Chris Christie, Ted Cruz is different because he has a legitimate base of support, I think, within the Republican Party. But Christie, and first of all, with Chris Christie, are we just going to forget he was the first real person to endorse Donald Trump in the 2020 election, or in the 2016 election? Even put that aside, he doesn't have any credibility, with a lot of the Trump base. Christie's problem was basically he lost the New Hampshire primary. He had no organic level of support. You could argue more so as a Marco Rubio figure than you could from Chris Christie, given how far back that he ended up finishing in that. So with Christie, the idea that he could mount a serious challenge to Trump, not going to happen.
Right.
Nikki Haley is the same. I mean, first of all, like, what is your critique of the man? You worked for him, and then you kissed his ass for years while he was in office. Then she criticized. Do you remember this whole thing? She criticized him after January 6th in the Atlantic, and then she tried to call him to apologize.
Yeah,
and he wouldn't take
I
the phone
forgot
call.
about that.
And then she personally had to like come out and kind of refute her own comments. And now, she's in this weird gray space. It's like, I'm sorry. The only person who has any credibility, with the Republican base and has a chance, and by the way, you guys know our position, like I think it's a small chance, is Ron DeSantis. He talked about it a little bit, but something I'm noticing with all these candidates, Christie aside, none of them are willing to just call the man out.
Right.
So if you have been following Mike Pompeo's feed recently, he'll be like, we need candidates which are winners, not losers. And I'm like, just say it. Say it or don't. Because this, cryptic that is weakness. Like, you're just trying to criticize Trump without being criticized by Trump himself. DeSantis, to his credit, got shots fired at him, and he's like, look, it's all noise. He blamed it on the cable media, cable corporate media, and then was like, at the end of the day, look at the scoreboard. I personally still thought that was weak.
Let me be very clear here. I don't care what team you play for. One thing a leader or somebody I'm about to vote for or somebody I need to defend, one thing they not going to get off is disrespecting my family members or things like that. And I'm just going to like let it roll off my shoulders. Like, I think that's the biggest problem with the Nikki Haley or with Ted Cruz specifically. Like, this dude disrespected your wife. This dude freaking accused your dad of being part of the conspiracy or part of the reason why JFK got assassinated. And all you did was lick his fucking boots. That's not leadership to me. That means you're willing to get walked all over. You're willing to get disrespected. For what? For the appearance of strength, for the appearance of political influence and power? Like, you just showed everybody that in real life you're weak as hell. You know what I mean? And I know a whole bunch of guys from the state of Texas who would never let somebody like Trump, regardless of political party, regardless of ideology, they would never let this dude, somebody like Trump, disrespect them or their family like that. But the leadership in Texas seem to don't have a problem with that.
I think he should have just said, look at the scoreboard. Any of this trying to avoid a squabble with Trump, if you're going to beat him, how exactly do you expect
How is that going to work out?
All of this veiled criticism, again, Christie aside, because I will at least give him credit. I don't think he has a credible shot of doing it, but he was like, look, it's Trump. Trump is the reason this is happening. If that's your theory, advance it, stick by it. You have no real, nobody's going to respect you in trying to like run this two-faced campaign where you love Trump, but you want to move past him.
I mean, and no one, like, it's very transparent.
Yeah,
it's like
knows.
very transparent.
Right.
You're trying to walk this line and do this little dance of like not directly saying that the problem is Donald Trump, but thinking you're going to be able to like put up some smoke signals to get people to back you. I have never understood how that's ultimately going to work out. It's one thing in this preliminary phase.
That's the problem. If you're going to call somebody out specifically for their behavior, then call it out. But this is always going to be the biggest problem is you can't call out if you call out somebody on a specific thing or you disagree with somebody on a specific topic, all of a sudden, everything else that you've ever said is completely irrelevant. Or it's just, like this one specific thing makes you, like anti-Trump or never Trump or anything like that. And I'm like, when has that ever been the case in real life? That you had to toe the line on absolutely everything. It just doesn't make any sense. Right? But that's the problem. Like, the whole team sport thing should have stayed with sports. And now we got this whole team sport thing in our government and our actual society, guys. And it's like, yo, it's not how we're supposed to operate.
is when you're not head to head to, you know, sort of make the passive aggressive comment, to do the equivalent of the subtweet. But ultimately, you're going to have to go head to head with this guy. You're going to have a theory of the case. You're going to have to explain to his supporters in something that they, you know, understand and appreciate why they should move on from somebody that they still continue to really like and support. So let's go ahead and put this Wall Street Journal recap up on the screen. DeSantis, others draw distinctions with Trump in 2024 GOP nomination race. They go through. Trump also addressed the crowd via satellite from Florida and received a standing ovation, by the way. But they say the event at the Venetian Resort served as the first major platform for others seeking to capitalize on a growing appetite for someone else. They've got the whole list of names here: Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, some huddled privately with donors. DeSantis, of course, garnering the greatest excitement, had a primetime speaking slot on Saturday. And they also say that, you know, basically these party leaders and would-be contenders walking a very fine line, trying to highlight Mr. Trump's shortcomings without alienating his supporters. They credited the former president's accomplishments, many highlighting his decision to relocate the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. And they made other unmistakable attempts to draw contrast, but very few took the line of Christie and directly actually went after him.
Yeah, and look, that's the major takeaway, which is at the end of the day, outside of Chris Christie, no credible candidate was willing to challenge Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup, actually call him out from the stage. How long are we going to keep up this charade, folks?
Yeah.
Stop trying to play with people. DeSantis, this is why, I've seen the DeSantis camp likes to think that you can attack Trump on COVID and COVID lockdowns. And I just think that is a farce. They're like, he locked down the country. First of all, we live in a federalist country. The reason DeSantis was able to do what he wanted in Florida is because governors got to run their states however they wanted.
Yeah, it didn't come from the federal government.
Trump was criticizing lockdowns in, April and in May? It didn't.
Florida also had a lot of people that died from COVID too, right? So, I kind of get the idea of why people are so against or are against the lockdowns, but guys, that was just a very unique, that year was just so unique, man. People were just trying to do their best, and I get it. Some governors did better than others, man, but we gotta, just, I typically vote Democrat. But even I have to admit that Governor Mike DeWine, when we really needed him to step up the most, what real leadership is, he came through for the American people. He came through for the state of Ohio. I'm really proud of how he tried to, take care of us during the pandemic, which is why it was so unfortunate that our Ohio state legislator tried to basically impeach him or remove him because they hated the way he was trying to take care of our people, man. And it just seemed like, some Republicans were okay with, bodies dropping left and right just for the sake of money, man. And it's just, at some point, we keep saying that we need to be Americans and we need to do all of this, but then keep putting the almighty dollar in front of everything. It's crazy.
It work. You think Gavin Newsom, he doesn't need to listen to Trump. That's the whole point of having states which are independent relatively from the federal government. So there you have that. Second, they're like, well, he didn't fire Fauci fast enough. I'm like, look, I don't even disagree with that point, but it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
What do we look, when we look at the preference and the COVID in terms of its ranking, how people vote, it's not there. There was a big prediction by a lot of Republicans in this election, of which, I was somewhat of a part of, people are going to remember lockdowns. No, they don't actually care at all.
Yeah.
The difference between Virginia and even now, only 1 year, totally different universe away from school closures. Now it's all about abortion. It's about the economy, about very, pressing issues ahead of us right now. So anyway, all this critique that they think that they have against the man, I just don't see it. I don't see any evidence right now to actually back that up electorally in terms of the way that people have voted.
And I continue to think that ultimately, if Trump is in fact indicted, you don't think that all of these people, with maybe the exception of Chris Christie, who we already said, I don't think that he really has a shot.
Guys, Trump could be indicted. And guess what's going to happen to Donald Trump? The same thing that has happened to him his entire life. Absolutely nothing. Not going to jail, not going to do anything like that. I would be thoroughly shocked if that actually happened. But I think we all know, even if he deserves it, that's not going to happen.
Credibility with the base at this point, even though I do think he's a very politically talented person, but just like he missed his moment back in 2012, a decade ago. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if he is indicted, which I do think is still fairly likely, I think all of these people will rally around him once again. I mean, they're going to defend him on this. Like, they almost have to. There's no way the base would accept you if you didn't do that. I mean, they would just, you know, totally reject on a hand anyone who was like, yes, I think he should be indicted, and yes, I think that this is all justified. So I think it's going to be very tricky for anyone to supplant him at this point. You know, the time when he was weakest was right after January 6th. Maybe they had a shot right then if everybody got on board and everybody sort of like with one unified front tried to do something. They didn't do that. And the other thing that they're going to face is, much like 2016, they're going to have a divided field. I mean, you know, I know that they would... There's a group that would love if it was just Trump versus DeSantis. Number one, it's not even totally clear that DeSantis is going to run, by the way.
Correct.
And number two, there are going to be other challengers for that, you know, to divide up that anti-Trump vote to the extent it even exists within the GOP base. That makes it a much trickier situation as well. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now.
All right, let's see what else we got.
I just love this story so much. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. So we got a late Friday pronouncement. This was from CBS News. They said, given the news that some 75% of existing employees at Twitter were ultimately going to resign and didn't sign Elon's, quote, hardcore pledge, that they would be suspending all Twitter activity due to, quote, uncertainty under Elon Musk's leadership. So what they said is that the ultimatum and the fallout, they said that their anxiety and enlightened uncertainty around Twitter, and out of an abundance of caution, CBS News is pausing its activity on social media as it continues to monitor the platform. Now, there's a lot of questions on that. What does that even mean? Because nothing that was going on at Twitter in terms of the reduction in force had really anything to do with the ability for you to distribute stories on social media. Like, what exactly was the uncertainty? That it wouldn't be there? Well, if it's not there, then just don't tweet anymore. If it's there, why not just keep tweeting? Because that's your job.
I could very much understand if you're telling your journalists, do not DM anything that's private.
Oh, sure.
Don't be corresponding with sources. Like, I think there's a real risk of, you know, heightened hacking risk and heightened security risk. But if you're just using it to like send out your stories, what's the risk? What's the uncertainty? I mean, sure, maybe it crashes, maybe it goes down. It's possible when you have this like skeleton crew running the whole thing, but I think it would be wise to advise your journalists, and for any of you out there, I think it also would be wise to like delete some of your DM conversations, anything that you wouldn't want to be like hacked or private information. I think that is wise and probably was always wise because DMs were never encrypted.
Correct.
But outside of that, I don't really get it. It seems like a virtue signal. I mean, that's what
and then that's exactly what it turned out to be, because literally 48 hours later, let's put this up there, they tweet out, after pausing for the weekend to assess the security concerns, CBS and Stations is resuming its activity on Twitter as we continue to monitor this situation.
Thank goodness.
First of all, monitor the situation. Again, what does that mean? Security concerns. As you said, okay, there's an argument, I guess, to be made. You know, frankly, if you're a journalist or security, if you don't have secure comms anywhere, that's a huge problem. You know, Instagram DMs, Twitter DMs, Facebook messages,
very least
any of
use
these places.
Signal, but I mean, a real news organization like this will have their own setup system for corresponding with confidential sources.
Yeah, look, if you really want to be secure, use Proton Mail and use Signal. Like that's basically all I use, especially Signal in private communications for this exact reason, especially when talking about something sensitive regarding sources and others. Those are the only people there's the only place that I'll correspond with anybody on. So, okay, I think that's a fine time actually to remind everyone like why you should be doing that. But it was complete and total virtue signaling. And it just belied like this real crazy panic that happened, on Friday after the news, or Thursday night. By the way, shout out to Counterpoints because they had breaking news coverage on that, the mass firing that was happening at Twitter.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh my God, Twitter's dying and all that. Guess what, guys? It's been like 72 hours and Twitter is fine. It turns out it was working completely fine. Says something interesting that you could fire 88% of employees from whenever you take something over, and the platform still works, which is kind of crazy. Maybe it'll break, and we'll find out something new. I don't know yet.
Listen, I'm not a tech expert.
Right.
I think there is certainly a decent case to be made that, okay, the platform can continue just sort of like on momentum for a while, but next time something breaks, next time there's an issue, do they have the staff in place to be able to deal with that? I mean, they're talking about their like entire teams that are missing at this point.
Yeah.
Basically, the people that stayed by reports are people who are worried about their immigration status and need the job to be able to stay in the country. Yeah, I mean, really, I think the rest of the staff was like, all right, good luck with what you're doing there and your whole hardcore pledge. I think I'm going to go take the 3-month severance and see if greener pastures exist. It is like, it is wild the way that he has just careened from one idea to the next. It has been truly chaotic and insane, especially when...
And that's the thing, right? I think that's what some people, regardless if you're liberal, conservative, if you're an Elon fan, or you just like what he's trying to do, this is the problem, is some of these decisions just come off as erratic, and if you're working for that company, y'all guys got to realize that it could be less to do with Elon and more to do that people in those sort of jobs, man, they just don't like instability, right? That kind of chaos and crap like that, guys, y'all know in normal jobs, bro, if your job is chaotic, man, it could cause a lot of headaches, and then it can have the unfortunate effects of you like bringing that home, right? Like you could be bringing that nonsense home. You could be, that shit ruins your whole day because you're not even sure if the company you working for is stable, which means you don't know if you're getting paid, bro. And that's not just Twitter or anybody else that's making a lot of money. That's any job. People just don't like instability like that. That's just normal.
And you consider that he at least purports to believe Twitter is actually really important, that it is the digital town square. And that's why I care about this ultimately, because I think these social media platforms, they are natural monopolies. Like the value from them comes in the fact that everybody is there. That's why things like Gab and Parler and True Social or whatever were always going to be sort of a sideshow to the main event. And so it does matter, the quality of the platform, the quality of the tools. It matters whether it can persist into the future and what that all ultimately looks like. And the level of just sort of like throwing everything against the wall and careening from one decision, and then totally doing a U-turn in the completely opposite way is not a great way to run a company.
Yeah, and I will say the thing that actually pissed me off the most is actually somehow getting the least amount of attention. When he said, quote, new Twitter policy is freedom of speech but not freedom of reach.
Yeah.
Negative hate tweets will be max deboosted and demonetized. No ads or other revenue. You won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out, which is no different than the rest of the internet. I mean, look, as I have said from the beginning, what does negative and hate tweet even mean? Who decides? What's hateful? What's negative? You ask one person on the left, they're going to say this is hateful. You ask one person on the right, they're going to say that is hateful. What qualifies as negative? It's all in the eyes of the beholder, and it should not be up to some sort of centralized decision-making authority. I know it's uncomfortable.
Whether it's Elon or anyone else.
Yes, anyone. Exactly. Like, who knows how exactly this is going to be enforced? And can you even enforce it given the amount of staff that you have? It's actually cheaper and easier in the long run to just say, all tweets get equal treatment as long as they abide by the First Amendment. I mean, and Twitter's use policy or whatever it's called, users' terms of service, where they're like, you can't dox someone. Okay, that's fine. Just let it all float free. It's easier to moderate. But, and this is what he's getting to, at the end of the day, this is an admission that ad revenue is still king at Twitter. They have to care about ads and what gets served and what's not, because that is the major revenue line. It's also, frankly, an admission that the initial Twitter Blue rollout was a total failure. They say it will come out sometime at the end of November. By the way, you and I are losing our check marks. What a cry.
I'm devastated.
I could care less. Twitter check mark or not. The point is that they are admitting essentially here that they really do not have any real subscription plan in the interim, and that their content moderation policy is going to effectively be downstream of that. I will say I saw a little bit of good news, which is that there was a leaked document saying that the secondary thing that they are working on is called Blue for Enterprise. So I get maybe they heard our ideas, about charging companies and others. We'll see, but that's not nearly as much in discussion as the actual Twitter Blue verification rollout, which, look, I want to see initial numbers and revenue. It's a private company, so we'll never know fully what it is.
Right.
According to Elon right now, they say that there's more users on the platform than any time before. But there's no way to know.
But,
and also, why does that matter if you have no advertisers?
That's it. I mean, okay, that's fine. But they're all tweeting about like how the platform is about to tank and go under, and like the whole thing is a chaotic mess. But it doesn't matter much from a revenue perspective. This has always been the challenge with Twitter and with other companies too. I mean, the whole idea with these tech companies was in the beginning, a lot of them was like, oh, if you get the users, then we'll figure out the business model later. Right. And with Twitter, especially if many of the advertisers have fled at this point, the fact that you have more users on the platform for free doesn't actually help you in terms of your business model. And going back to what you were saying about using the algorithm to suppress whatever, he deems hate speech to be, this is in a lot of ways the most pernicious form of censorship, because at least with the bans, President Trump has been banned. There can be a public debate and discussion about that. Can be some pressure placed on the company, but it's very hard to determine what's being suppressed and what's not being suppressed. We see it on YouTube all the time where it's a total black box. I mean, we feel like, okay, this content didn't do well even though we thought it would. Is that because it's suppressed? Is it because people just aren't interested? Why did this segment blow up where it's unexpected? Maybe people just had an interest in it we didn't expect. Or maybe YouTube pumped the shit out of it. You can't, there's no way to know. Yeah. And you end up sounding like a crazy person talking about shadow banning and suppression and all of these things. And since there's zero transparency around how any of this is done, it ends up being actually a lot more nefarious and pernicious, in my opinion, than just the obvious things like the outright bans, where at least you can tell and say definitively what's going on.
Such a great point. Recently, I feel like we've been losing our minds. We've been getting 2,000 to 3,000 new subscribers a month on our YouTube channel, when we previously were getting tens of thousands a month. You and I have been doing this for a long time. I mean, we know what it should look like. And then all of a sudden, just boom, overnight. Is it because of us? I don't know. Is it because of broader market conditions? I tend to suspect so. But how? We don't know. We know nothing about controversial content, what's getting served. We can see our click. So it's okay, the click-through remains the same. Video's not getting served. Why?
Guys, the issue is that free speech is always going to be a huge problem when you're talking about private enterprise. Right? Because the moment the free speech, you guys got to remember, this is a lot of our rights. There's a but factor to it, but a lot of our rights just protects us from legal action. Social media platforms, unless there's a government ran platform, which there never should be, a lot of these issues is just normal. For example, man, if I make a Twitter or if I make a YouTube or if I make anything and I create that account and I say, I click agree to that terms of service, I see, I understand there's some people who actually love reading that thing, but 99% of the people do not read that. But we get the gist, and then most people understand, the moment we agree to someone else's platform is the moment we've inherently agreed to some level of moderation. Whatever that moderation looks like, people just get surprised because they didn't realize that, the things that they're saying can be moderated or it violates the terms of service. But again, a lot of those surprises come from the fact that the people who it affects probably didn't read the terms of service. And so, especially when you got a profit motive, there's certain things that businesses just don't want their crap being seen by. Like, you don't want somebody who's an devout white supremacist saying some reckless crap right underneath it's hotel bookings, hotel.yeah. Like, nobody wants that shit next. Like, nobody wants their business seen to those sort of reckless comments, because in a way it's an essentially like you're endorsing that, even though you're not. Even though the people who's running that booking.com business, they didn't choose to have that crap posted up right next to Nick Fuentes or something like that. It just happened. But since that's the possibility, you're gonna see advertisers wanting to remove their stuff from that platform because, like it or not, people associate things with, birds of a feather flock together. I mean, that's a real universal concept here. And so when you're talking about things like moderation and stuff like that, your business model out the gate has to reflect that your social media platform says it's a free for all. Whatever's going to be said is going to be said. But you also got to understand that if you're going to make some sort of social media platform that's more or less a free speech platform, you have to be prepared that you're not going to have the kind of advertising dollars that you think you are, because people are going to be saying stuff that they just don't want their business associated with, right? And that's always going to be the problem. Is business is inherently a profit motive, and what people want, you have to remove the profit motive out of. Well, the problem is then what people want, no one's going to create, or no one with the skills, abilities, and resources is going to create, because all they're doing is just going to be losing money. And let's be clear here, we've seen a lot of freaking, here in America, we so, lawsuit happy. The last thing people want to deal with on top of that is losing even more money, because now they're getting sued by somebody who said they kids saw this on your platform and you're not moderating it and it's hate speech. And so now you're not only making any sort of money from advertising and revenue and anything, you're losing even more money because you got to spend that crap in court, man. Like, most businesses don't want those problems, and that's not a liberal conservative thing. That's a free market thing. That's hey, I'm a business owner who doesn't want to lose money from dumb shit thing.
Why? What for what reason?
Right.
Are it's like, did people's user preferences change? Is it's like one of those things where, like you said, you genuinely feel like you're losing your mind. And that's a huge problem with, quote, shadow banning, what is negative, what's not. And he needs to release, at the very least, a guide. He's like, this is the exact criteria of which we will an analyze tweet. But even then, I mean, it's all, and the edge cases are where it always matters, and especially high profile in the realm of politics. So we'll see, but I'm very disappointed in that decision.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now.
And that's the thing with moderation. Again, I love the Constitution, man. I love our Bill of Rights. I love freedom of speech. But there's always a but factor with all of our rights. You got freedom of speech, but, you know what I mean? Hey, Slow. Hey, thanks for subscribing, man. You got freedom of speech. You got freedom to say whatever you want, but, right? You're allowed to own a weapon, but, you know what I mean? You're allowed, we're supposed to be protected from illegal search and seizure, but, you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of those things we don't realize. Like, the moment we sign that terms of agreement, the moment we agree to use someone else's platform, that's someone else's rules. Like, for example, I can't come out here, I can't invite somebody over to my crib and that person think they gonna call me all sort of names, and I don't have the right to kick them out of my house. Like, hold up, bro. The moment you step on my property and my shit, like, there's a respect factor here. Like, you're not just gonna be talking to me all kind of reckless in my house and then ask me to give you a glass of water or cook you some food or some shit like that. Like, nah, get out of here with that nonsense. obviously it's a little bit more complicated when it comes to corporations, but it's the same concept. Like if I go onto Twitter, however it is, or if I go on to Facebook, or if I go to IG and I go to these different platforms, I'm going to someone else's business. I'm going else to someone else's platform, and I'm asking them to allow me to say whatever it is I want to say and express on their platform. Oh, well, you can do that, but same thing. Yeah, but you can say this, but right, here's the limit. Here's the limitations. It's the same way. I like people, I like diversified opinions. I like having people say a whole bunch of things. I like talking to all different kind of people from all walks of life. I'll talk to white supremacists. I'll talk to the extremist Muslims or whoever, whatever crazy fringe groups is out there. I don't have to tolerate disrespect. You don't have the freedom to disrespect me and me not respond. Right? And I think that's what a lot of people forget is you don't have the right to go and disrespect others on someone else's platform and they not do anything about it. Right? And so we got to understand that in a sense, these social media platforms are public squares, but because they're private enterprises, you're not entitled to their platform. You can go and make an entire platform all on your own, right? Trump did it with Truth Social, right? You guys, Gab, Parler, whatever it is, people whine about being silenced or whatever. Well, our country and our market allows you to create your own shit. You can go create your own platform. You can do all these different things, right? You're not entitled to a specific social media platform just because it happens to be popular, right? That's not how anything works. Like just because Twitter's the most poppin' thing or TikTok's the most poppin' thing or whatever social media app is the most popular thing, you're not entitled to use that. Right. And you took that and that entitlement was you acknowledge that you have no entitlement when you click agree to the terms of service and created that account. I get it. There's certain situations where, yeah, you got banned. You shouldn't have got banned. It was just somebody just trying to troll and trying to get your shit banned. But guess what? There is a process for that. But it's I just have to say, like, it's so weird that I'm constantly hearing about conservatives being silenced on the platforms that they're claiming to be silenced on. When it's like, well, then you're not really being silenced. Like, if you're hopping on TikTok talking about TikTok is the most used social media app in the planet now. It's just really hard to see some people talk about they're being silenced on TikTok. That's like when people hop on Fox News, the most watched news channel in America. That's like when people out here freaking get on Fox News talking about they being silenced. Like, that's not how it works. Like, you're not being silenced, bro. Right now you're just airing out grievances.
Now.
And so we really got to understand the difference between, freedom of speech and freedom of consequences. Like, guys, that is not the same thing at all. Let's see what else we got, man, before we chill out for a little bit, do something new. But I saw this. First off, rest in peace to the people that lost 5 people dead, man. Like, these mass shootings, it's just insane that we're supposed to be a first world country. We're supposed to be one of the best countries in the world. And yet we got violence that rivals third world countries and developing countries and hell, war-torn countries for that matter. Like This is ridiculous, man. Mass shooting at Colorado Springs. LGBTQ club leaves 5 dead, destroys a coveted sense of safety. I mean, Jesus, bro. Dog, we can't even go. It's gotten to the point where, like, Americans, we can't even go outside without having our head on the swivel. You can't even go out at night and just chill without somebody wanting to ruin your thing. And you know, it's the same. Like, and I know a lot of people have gone through this because I've gone through it with some of my friends too. It's like, man, you want to go out, you want to have a good time, but there's always somebody there for the wrong fucking reasons. Or there's somebody there who's not there to have a good time. They're not there to freaking just chill, hang out with their homies, or just talk to some girls. They're there because they're looking for confrontation. And you know there's people out here looking for who get liquored up and then they're going out and they're looking for confrontation. Now, obviously, this goes way beyond that because we're dealing with yet another mass shooting. But typically we know, man, this is what sucks. Is like these are supposed to be stress relievers. Like we're supposed to be going out at night as human beings. You know, F work, this work week was trash, but I'm about to come out here with the homies, have a good time. Oh, can't even do that. Started as a joyous night of laughter and dancing, devolved into a scene of terror when a gunman walked into an LGBTQ club and immediately opened fire. I looked up and saw the outline of a man holding a rifle at the entrance of the club, probably about 15 feet from me, said Michael Anderson, who was bartending at Club Q in Colorado Springs, Colorado, late Saturday night. I ducked behind the bar, and as I did, glass began to spew all around me. Within seconds, his friend and bar supervisor, Daniel Aston, was fatally wounded. Rest in peace, Daniel Aston. Another 4 people were killed and 25 others were injured in a rampage that stirred memories of the 2016 Pulse massacre in Orlando, in which 49 people at that LGBTQ nightclub were killed. Anderson said it took a moment for him to process the horror. When he did, he thought his life was over. There was a moment in time where I feared I was not going to make it out of that club alive. I have never prayed so sincerely and quickly in my life as I was anticipating that outcome and afraid of that outcome, Anderson told CNN Monday. As I was praying, the gunshots stopped. 2 heroic people managed to subdue the gunman, Anderson and police said, preventing even greater tragedy. I saw what I believe was probably the gunman lying on the ground, getting beat up and kicked and yelled at by 2 very brave people. He said he doesn't know the identities of the people who stopped the shooting, but I hope to find out one day because I truly believe those 2 people saved my life. Whoever those 2 people are, I haven't been keeping up with the news too much. Whoever those 2 people are, thank you. Just thank you. Just as a fellow American, thank you. Police rushed to the scene around midnight and found at least 2 people have taken down the gunman. In addition to the 5 people killed, another 25 were injured, including 19 who were shot. No motive for the attack have been released. A 22-year-old man is in custody and was treated at the hospital Sunday, but he was not shot by officers. Investigators are still working to determine the motive, including whether shooting was a hate crime. This is just like, this is terrible, man. You know, like, I really hope, I'm going to be going down later, seeing what else is, all the other information going on right now, but come on, a club that's definitely LGBTQ, we know this was intentional, and we know exactly why. You know, and somebody's going to try to chalk this up to mental health, and instead, we know that this is purely based on hate. It ain't got nothing to do with mental instability and everything to do with, you know, people just really taking this as a totem, as something they need to really act out on. we'll talk about this later. Just wanted to go over a few things this morning. See what's popping on the news Monday morning.